Hey everyone, per your requests, I'm starting Sword of Coming, chapters 521 through 530 of the previous episode. In a serene courtyard on Osmanthus Island, Qian Ping'an continues his arduous journey, practicing both fist and sword techniques. Lu Tai reveals his true power as an adept cultivator, while the two share a complex, unspoken bond, balanced between wary respect and genuine camaraderie. After a dangerous skirmish involving rival cultivators and a sinister scheme, Qian Ping'an is left to reflect on the nature of martial arts, morality, and the shifting power dynamics of the continent. His growing mastery, characterized by both martial prowess and a maturing heart, leads him to a profound realization about his own path. Upon reaching the ferry station, Qian is approached by Lu Yong of the Green Goat Palace. Hoping to secure favors from Jiang Shangzhen, a powerful figure in Qian's orbit, Lu Yong gives him 6 rare, seated meditation pills. Qian accepts this gesture, realizing that his journey is moving him toward a destiny where he must not only hone his techniques, but also navigate the complex, often merciless web of cultivation politics to protect those he cares about. If possible, you can support me via PayPal, or become a channel member to help me keep this channel running. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story of Sword of Coming audio series. Chapter 531. Julien rubbed his hands together like a fly, smiling. I'm already used to being number 1 in the lotus flower-blessed land. Now that I'm in such a massive new world, there's no way I'll ever be able to climb to the same heights as before, but at the very least I have to strive for the top spot among the 4 of us. Otherwise, I would be too ashamed to serve you, young master. If I can't even beat a woman, then I may as well smash my own head against a wall and end it all right now. Besides, risk and reward have always come hand in hand. During the battle back at the temple, I let myself run a bit too wild, and even now I'm still plagued by some internal injuries. Surely you're not so cruel that you would stand by and watch as I'm left behind by the other 3. Have you made up your mind? Qian Ping'an asked with a serious expression. Julien was just as serious as he nodded in response. If I hadn't made up my mind, then I wouldn't have come to knock on your door and disturb your rest in the middle of the night. Qian Ping'an pulled out the 2 vials, then tipped a pill out of each as he sighed in a resigned manner. You're responsible for your own life, I suppose. These 2 pills will serve as compensation for your courageous showing at the temple. Julien accepted the 2 pills from Qian Ping'an and immediately swallowed them, then stood up smiling and bade Qian Ping'an farewell. You're a good man, young master. From now on, I'll serve you with the utmost loyalty. Qian Ping'an knew better than to take Julien's flattery seriously, so it merely went in one ear and out the other. With that, Julien departed. Later that night, Pei Qian had already fallen asleep in the neighboring room, and Qian Ping'an was practicing his standing meditation in his own room when he heaved a faint sigh before opening the door. Sui Yubian was standing outside. I don't want a fire dragon pill or a rainbringer pill. All I want is a seated meditation pill, she declared in a direct and straightforward manner. Are you that eager to take a risk on your own life with Julien? Are you two a pair of lovers trying to die a romantic death together? If you're not even patient enough to wait until we reach Old Dragon City, then it would be a complete waste even if I gave you an entire vial of seated meditation pills. After delivering that tirade, Qian Ping'an slammed the door shut without even allowing her into the room. Sui Yubian stood expressionlessly in front of his door for a long while before finally departing in silence. The following 5 days passed by in peace and serenity. There was still just over a month left until the ship was scheduled to reach Old Dragon City. On this day, Qian Ping'an approached Green Goat Palace's administrator on the ship to ask if he knew of any premium cauldrons being sold, to which the administrator replied that he did. Even though Green Goat Palace didn't sell cauldrons, Lu Yong had dedicated his entire life to pill refinement, and over time he had gathered a large collection of cauldrons. The administrator knew that Qian Ping'an was an extremely esteemed guest, so he promised Qian Ping'an that he would bring up the matter to Lu Yong. But as for whether Lu Yong would actually be willing to part with any of his cauldrons, that was something that he couldn't make any guarantees on. For now, all he could do was send a message by flying sword back to Green Goat Palace. Qian Ping'an cupped his fists in a grateful salute. The administrator didn't know much about Qian Ping'an, but he was certain that Qian Ping'an had to be some young master with extremely powerful backers, and that he seemed to be quite close with the leader of the Jiang clan. Otherwise, He wouldn't have dared to agree to bring up his request for a cauldron to Lu Yong. Lu Yong's cauldrons were his most prized possessions, and even the ones that he didn't use were carefully stored away. As long as he wasn't refining pills, he would carefully wipe down all of his cauldrons every single day. The flying sword letters sent out on the Heavenly Palace Peak were a special product from a large cultivating sect on northern complete reed continent. It was a very expensive service, but it was worth the money, and it was extremely fast, far more so than this ship, which prioritized safety at the cost of speed. As Green Goat Palace's administrator returned to Chan Ping'an with an answer to his request, Chan Ping'an was feeling a little awkward and uneasy. Lu Yong's response was that he would personally deliver a premium cauldron that had been in his collection for many years, and Chan Ping'an was feeling awkward because he was certain that he didn't have enough money left to be able to afford the cauldron, so he would have to borrow money from Fan Air or Zheng Dafeng once he reached Old Dragon City. However, doing business seemed to be far too unreasonable and unfair for Lu Yong. After all, Chan Ping'an had grown accustomed to the style of business conducted by Old Man Yang back in the Yang family's medicine shop. With that in mind, Chan Ping'an was feeling very guilty to have troubled Lu Yong to come all this way again. But to his surprise, after he revealed his current financial status, Lu Yong had immediately burst into laughter, and not only was he not angry in the slightest, it seemed that he was put more at ease. After arriving at Chan Ping'an's room, Lu Yong instructed the Golden Courtier administrator to keep a lookout outside the room, and only after that did Lu Yong bring out a special pocket treasure that was only just barely large enough to hold his beloved cauldron. As soon as the cauldron was revealed, it hovered around a foot in the air above the table, and rainbow mist permeated in all directions, while a fragrant aroma wafted throughout the entire room. Anyone would be able to tell that this was an extremely precious cauldron unless they were blind. Pei Qian carefully circled around the table while intently staring at the red cauldron, which had a length, width, and height all roughly comparable to the length of a grown man's arm. The cauldron had 5 legs, and each leg consisted of a leg from each of the 5 beasts on the cauldron, joined together. The heads of the beasts were situated on the edge of the cauldron, and their mouths were open to release the rainbow mist, which consisted of 5 colors that corresponded with the 5 elements. A proud look appeared on Lu Yong's face as he pointed at the hovering cauldron with a smile on his face and said, "This cauldron is called the 5-colored golden box cauldron, and the primary materials used to refine it are of the metal element. The teachings of our old pill refinement ancestor state that the metal element has an everlasting and imperishable property, so it's perfect for refining all types of treasures. It was only thanks to a huge fated opportunity that I was able to obtain this cauldron from an immortal abode in a broken small world, and at the time there had been many powers fighting over the cauldron. I was only able to obtain the cauldron as I had the best luck out of everyone. Normally, I wouldn't be willing to sell this cauldron, but seeing as it's for your personal use, I'd be more than happy to part with it, and I'll also give you a very fair price of only 50 grain rain coins." Chan Ping'an's eyelids twitched slightly upon hearing this. 50 grain rain coins was an astronomical price, but he knew that for such an exceptional cauldron, it was an absolute bargain. After taking a deep breath, he said, "Palace Leader Lu, I definitely want to buy this cauldron, but at the moment I lack the funds required, and I'm not sure whether my friend over in Old Dragon City would be willing to lend me so much money. If I've made you come all this way for nothing, then please allow me to apologize in advance." Chan Ping'an cupped his fist in an apologetic salute as he spoke. A myriad of emotions welled up in Lu Yong's heart, and he couldn't help but think of how great a place this world would be if all cultivators were as polite and reasonable as Chan Ping'an. Was he truly willing to sell this 5-colored golden box cauldron? Prior to meeting Jiang Shangzhen and Chan Ping'an, anyone who tried to purchase the cauldron from him would have instantly been met with a torrent of abuse, and if the request had come from a qi refiner below the nascent tier, then Lu Yong would have been inclined to give them a beating as well. However, in the wake of recent events, his mindset had taken on a drastic shift. After returning to Green Goat Palace with the batch of grain rain coins that had almost cost him his life, he had pondered everything that had recently transpired, and he had figured out how best to deal with people with Jiang Shangzhen. Hence, after receiving that flying sword letter from the ship, not only was he not disgruntled by Chan Ping'an's request, he was ecstatic. Of course, it pained him immensely to have to part with this cauldron that he cherished almost as much as his own life, but he knew what had to be done, and as long as Chan Ping'an dared to buy it, he was willing to sell it. There was also a secret behind this 5-colored golden box cauldron, which was that it was a cauldron of too high a caliber. Ironically, this proved to be a curse rather than a blessing for Lu Yong, as the refinement mantra that he used and the pill refinement ingredients that he had access to were essentially not worthy of the 5-colored golden box cauldron. Perhaps he would use the cauldron once every century on average, and the pills that he managed to refine using it would only just barely break even or sometimes even result in a net loss. Hence, he had to admit that the cauldron was next to useless for him, and that he was simply too inferior a cultivator and pill refinement master to make full use of it. Shortly thereafter, Lu Yong departed from Chan Pingin's room with a pleased smile. He had left the 5-colored golden box cauldron with Chan Pingin, along with a pill refinement book stitched together using some type of unknown material. Chan Pingin carefully stowed the cauldron away into his minimization treasure, then began reading through the book, which had been personally written by Lu Yong. After a short stint of reading, he left his room to go to the sword chamber on the ship that was specifically designated for sending out flying sword letters, then sent a letter to Jiang Shangzhen. In the letter, he gave a brief discount of the transaction that had just taken place between him and Lu Yong, and at the end of the letter he wrote, "I owe you 2 favors, one big and one small." Inside a room on the ship, the Golden Courtier administrator was standing beside Lu Yong, informing him of the fact that Chan Pingin had just sent a letter to Jade Tablet Sect. As for the contents of the letter, that naturally remained confidential. Otherwise, no one would dare to use the flying sword letter service. "Does this young master come from a prestigious background, Palace Leader Lu?" the Golden Courtier administrator asked in a curious manner. Lu Yong carefully considered his response, then smiled as he replied, "I think just the fact that he possesses a minimization treasure at such a young age is already very telling." Earlier, Lu Yong had realized that he had made a mistake as soon as he left Chan Pingin's room. He had left the 5-colored golden box cauldron as a gesture of sincerity, but a cauldron of such an exceptional caliber couldn't just be stored in any pocket treasure, and even if one could forcibly stuff the cauldron into a pocket treasure, there was a chance that it would simply burst open the pocket treasure's internal space. However, right as Lu Yong was about to turn back, he was surprised to discover that the cauldron's aura had instantly vanished. There was no doubt in his mind that a minimization treasure had been used. He must be a direct descendant of an extremely formidable immortal power, the Golden Courtier administrator speculated. It's rather interesting that a young immortal from such a prestigious background likes to travel with pure martial artists as his servants. Lu Yong didn't want to discuss Chan Pingin any further, so he waved a hand to put an end to that conversation. Following the administrator's departure, Lu Yong sat by himself in his room as he sighed. "My suffering wasn't in vain. My Green Goat Palace is saved." As the ship finally arrived at the ferry station on the island outside Old Dragon City, Chan Pingin heaved a long sigh of relief. He was back in Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, and it was already late winter. The Fan clan's Osmanthus Island ship was absent from the ferry station, so it was most likely yet to return from Stalactite Mountain, and Chan Pingin wondered if he would get a chance to see Lady Gui again. As soon as Chan Pingin spotted the Golden Courtier administrator standing outside his door without Lu Yong by his side, a sense of foreboding welled up in his heart. Sure enough, the Golden Courtier administrator informed, "Palace Leader Lu had to return to the Heavenly Palace Peak over some urgent matters, and he instructed me to tell you that there's no hurry for you to pay for the cauldron. Whenever you get the money, you can send someone to deliver it to the ship, but there's no need to put any pressure on yourself." "I'll be sure to gather the money as soon as possible," Chan Pingin replied in a resigned manner. The Golden Courtier administrator smiled as he re-emphasized, "There's no hurry. Prior to his departure, Palace Leader Lu instructed me not to try and rush you under any circumstances." Not long after Lu Yong returned to the Heavenly Palace Peak, a flying sword letter had arrived at Green Goat Palace with such incredible speed and power that it had almost laid waste to the sword chamber on the mountain. Lu Yong retrieved the letter in a timid fashion, then returned to his manor with a steely expression, and only when he was sure that he wouldn't be seen did he erupt into hearty laughter. In addition to the 100 grain rain coins that Jiang Shangzhen had left for him on the ship, from this day forth, Jade Tablet Sect was going to take in every single pill produced by Green Goat Palace and help them sell the pills across the entire Parasol Leaf continent. Lu Yong immediately instructed people to leave the mountain to recruit disciples from whatever source possible, whether that be searching for young talents in villages, or outright requesting them from the Great Quan Empire, Southern Qi Nation, and all of the other nearby nations. In any case, Green Goat Palace was going to be taking in as many disciples as possible, and it didn't matter even if their aptitude was a little lacking. As long as they cultivated for 7 or 8 years and were diligently instructed by Green Goat Palace, they would at least be able to refine the simplest pills, and that would be guaranteed income for the sect. After that, Lu Yong made his way to the ancestral hall, and while offering up incense to the portraits of the old ancestors hanging on the walls, he prayed, "Esteemed ancestors, please bless our Green Goat Palace so that it can thrive and prosper for millennia to come." Chen Ping'an emerged onto the dock of the ferry station with his bamboo case on his back. With only one step left, Pei Qian brought her feet together, then jumped down onto the ground and placed her hands on her hips as she puffed out her chest and declared, "Eastern treasured vile continent, here I come." What was the name of that little girl who likes to wear red? Li Baoping, right? She's studying at that Mountain Cliff Academy, or whatever, like an idiot. How dare she refer to my father as her junior uncle? I'll teach her a good lesson when I see her. Wei Xian and the others also disembarked from the ship, then gathered around on either side of Chen Ping'an. Where to next, young master? Do we go straight into the city? Julien asked with a slight bow. Chen Ping'an already had a plan in mind, and he smiled as he replied, "There are people from the Fan clan of Old Dragon City staying at this ferry station. All we need to do is go and find them. I'm very good friends with one of their clan's heirs." "As expected, all of your friends are very remarkable, young master," Julien praised. After consuming those 2 pills from Green Goat Palace, not only had Julien recovered from all of his internal injuries, his soul had also been nurtured and enhanced. However, as for when he was going to be able to reach the Vajrabhati tier, Chen Ping'an didn't ask, and Julien didn't say. At the same time, it occurred to both Lu Baixiang and Sui Yubian that someone that Chen Ping'an was referring to as a close friend had to be a very close friend indeed. "Don't forget about the candy that you owe me," Wei Xian said to Pei Qian. A pitiable look immediately appeared on Pei Qian's face as she replied, "I have no money at all right now." In the past, this would be considered deceiving the emperor, a crime punishable by death, Wei Xian said in a stern manner. Pei Qian pointed at Chen Ping'an in secret, then said to Wei Xian, "Look at how my father treats his friends, then look at how you're treating me as your friend. Do you not feel at least a little bit ashamed of yourself? Even between the closest of friends, there can be no ambiguity when it comes to money matters. Otherwise, even the strongest of friendships are bound to fall apart," Wei Xian replied. Pei Qian kicked Wei Xian's shin as she complained, "Being your friend sucks." Chen Ping'an turned around and Pei Qian hurriedly crouched down and patted Wei Zhan's leg, pretending to fuss over his attire as she said, "You're a grown man, old man Wei, why are you still sloppy? Look at how dirty your pants are. I'll dust them off for you." Chen Ping'an led the way toward the Fan clan's Osmanthus Island dock according to his memory, and his footsteps felt rather heavy whenever he thought of the debt of 50 grain rain coins that he currently owed. Shouldn't young boys be carrying hopes and aspirations on their shoulders instead of being burdened by debt? But then again, I'm no longer a young boy, am I? In the words of Pei Qian. How vexing. It didn't take long before Chen Ping'an and the others tracked down the Fan clan's people at the Osmanthus Island ferry station. Last time, the Golden Courtier swordsman Ma Ji had served as his coach driver, while Fan Air had accompanied him on the trip, so he hadn't come into contact with any other people from the Fan clan. However, as soon as Chen Ping'an declared his own identity, the Fan clan administrator was immediately delighted, as if he had just heard a piece of fantastic news, and he asked Chen Ping'an to wait for a moment while he sent a message back to Osmanthus Island. On top of that, he also called for several horse-drawn carriages before personally ushering Chen Ping'an and the others into the carriages, putting on an enthusiastic and respectful display that left Chen Ping'an feeling rather perplexed. As the connection point between Eastern Treasured Vile Continent and Parasol Leaf Continent, Old Dragon City was even more opulent than the capitals of many major empires, possessing 2 immortal ferry stations on an island that was close to 20 kilometers away from Old Dragon City, designated for the intercontinental ships of the city's 5 major clans. Back when Chen Ping'an first arrived at Old Dragon City, he was at the Western Ferry Station, and he had to travel over a road that was around 150 kilometers in length to enter the city. The road was owned by the Sun Clan, And even to this day, what had happened between himself and Sun Jiashu still left a rather sour taste in Qian Pingin's mouth. Qian Pingin and Pei Qian were traveling in the same carriage. After drifting around in the sky for so long on an intercontinental ship, they had finally reached solid ground and arrived in Qian Pingin's hometown, so she was very excited, and she was eagerly looking outside with a curious expression. Lu Baixiang and Sui Yubian were playing a game of Go together in another carriage, while Wei Xian and Zhu Lian were in a third carriage, with the former taking a nap, while the latter was reading his book. The inexplicably hospitable reception from the Fan clan's administrator struck Qian Pingin as rather strange, and so he began to think. He was definitely not an important figure. Back when he left Old Dragon City, he had only just broken through his fourth-tier bottleneck back at the Sun clan's ancestral residence. He knew very few people from Old Dragon City, the most prominent of which were Fan Sun Jiashu, who he had parted ways with on rather unfavorable terms, Zhang Dafeng, and Fu Nanhua, who was a sworn enemy of his but had decided not to make a move against him. It was a widely acknowledged fact that the Jiang clan was marrying down in this case, and that was a notion that even the Fu clan agreed with. The Cloud Forest Jiang clan was the first prominent clan of Middle-earth Divine Continent to move to Eastern Treasured Vile Continent, and its manor was situated on the shore of the Southeastern Sea, facing out into the ocean. It stretched close to 20 kilometers into the ocean before concluding with a pair of gates in the form of two giant natural rocks, and it was said to be a manor that encompassed the East Sea. Back when the orthodoxy of Confucianism was first established, the etiquette sage created a set of complex etiquette and rules for Majestic World. In the history of the Jiang clan, there had been several grand priests that enjoyed a transcendent status, serving as one of the 6 heavenly officials, and they were responsible for carrying out all types of rituals and ceremonies to attract the blessings of the heavens. At the time, the entirety of Old Dragon City had been speculating about whether the dowry from the Jiang clan was going to be a pseudo-celestial tool. However, for Qian Pingin, a topic that was so distant from himself was something that he would only discuss in passing with the likes of Zhang Dafeng and Fan over some wine. He wasn't from Old Dragon City, nor was he allied with any of the continent's major powers, so this was an event that he hardly cared about at all. So what if Fu Nanhua were to marry someone from the Jiang clan? Even if he were to somehow become the city lord of Old Dragon City over Fu Donghai and Fu Chunhua, both of whom were far superior to him in cultivation base, in that case, Qian Pingin would actually be feeling rather concerned, as this meant that there was a very good chance that Fan or even the entire Fan clan could be condemned due to their ties with him. While it was important to consider these matters carefully, Qian Pingin knew that overthinking things would only result in unwarranted panic and stress. After traveling for close to an hour, the horse-drawn carriage slowly drew to a halt, even though it still hadn't entered the city yet. Qian Pingin lifted the curtain of the carriage, and he was immediately greeted by the sight of a familiar figure, who was running toward the carriage while waving vigorously. He was still just as bright and vibrant as ever, and Qian Pingin heaved an internal sigh of relief upon seeing this, then got out of his carriage. It was Fan who had arrived to see him. He had grown from a boy into a handsome young man, but his unique aura of exuberance hadn't changed at all. Fan gave Qian Pingin a firm high five, then smiled as he asked, "Qian Pingin, did you feel my power through my hand just now? I don't want to scare you, but I'm also a 4th-tier martial artist now. From now on, you'll be the strongest 4th-tier martial artist under the heavens, while I'll be the 2nd strongest." Also a 4th-tier martial artist? Pei Qian and the others were all rather perplexed to hear this. "That's very impressive," Qian Pingin replied with a smile. Fan walked a quick lap around Qian Pingin, then asked, "Why aren't you wearing straw sandals anymore? I almost didn't recognize you." He then looked up at the top of Qian Pingin's head before heaving a deflated sigh. "Looks like you've grown a lot taller than me." After that, he pulled a bulging money pouch out of his sleeve in a sneaky fashion, then offered it to Qian Pingin while squinting incessantly. According to their agreement from last time, Qian Pingin had to fire a piece of chinaware to give to him as a present. Fan didn't care if it was ugly, as long as it was personally made by Qian Pingin, and he would show it off to his friends. Qian Pingin hurriedly gestured for Fan to put the money pouch away, then said in a quiet voice, "I still haven't made the piece of chinaware that I promised you yet. Once we get to Old Dragon City, I have to buy some pottery firing tools, then find some good clay to work with." The process isn't as simple as you think. Fanair wasn't disappointed to hear this and he replied, "Alright, in that case, let's go to Old Dragon City. I can help you look for clay." He carefully tucked his pouch of pocket money back up his sleeve. A pouch filled with golden ingots that were used only in the mortal world. The rules of the Fan clan were very strictly enforced, and even though Fanair was very much spoiled by the seniors of his clan, they refused to give him even a single piece of immortal currency. Over the past 2 years, Fanair had been regularly flattering his seniors, and during the spring festival the previous year, he had visited almost all of the Fan clan's households, and only then was he able to save up this much pocket money. "Come to my carriage, we'll talk inside," Fanair suddenly said. Chan Ping'an nodded in response, and he instructed Pei Qian to return to their carriage before he followed Fanair onto his. After sitting down in the carriage, Chan Ping'an asked, "Has there been some trouble?" Only in this carriage could they keep out certain sets of prying eyes in the city. Fanair nodded in response. "Some massive changes swept through Old Dragon City not long after you left." Chan Ping'an removed his wine gourd from his waist, then handed it to Fanair as he said, "Tell me about it." Fanair was ecstatic to see this, and he accepted the gourd from Chan Ping'an, then swished its contents around as he said, "I'll only take a small sip. Oh, this is some good wine. It tastes different from the osmanthus wine that my clan brews, but both are really nice. That sip just now only counts as half a sip. Let me take another one." Chan Ping'an sat with his legs crossed as he looked at Fanair with an amused smile. No matter what terrible news he was going to hear next, Fanair was still the same Fanair as before, and that was the best possible news that he could ask for. Only after taking 3 half-sips of wine from the sword-nurturing gourd did he return it to Chan Ping'an, following which he said, "You already know about the 5 major clans of Osmanthus Island. Ranked by power in descending order it goes Fu Sun Feng Ho Ding. Our Fan clan has always been content to serve as a subsidiary to the Fu clan, and the Fu clan has the city lord of Old Dragon City, who can dominate the other 4 clans all on his own. On top of that, our Fan clan has an Osmanthus Island, so there are many people who would like to replace one of the Feng, Ho, and Ding clans on the hierarchy with our Fan clan. The Sun clan's position as the second most powerful clan in the city is undisputed due to the presence of a nascent tier ancestor, and its exceptional business reputation." Chan Ping'an nodded in response. Fanair placed his hands onto his knees, then began giving Chan Ping'an a recount of the significant events that had unfolded in Old Dragon City over the past 2 years. In any case, whether you consider that there are 5 or 6 major clans in Old Dragon City, as long as the Fu clan doesn't try to eliminate the other clans so that it can become the sole dominant force, everyone coexists in harmony more or less. There have been some conflicts here and there, but before last year, none of those conflicts really escalated into anything significant. Not only is City Lord Fu Qi a nascent tier Earth immortal, he also possesses 4 pseudo-celestial tools. On top of that, the Fu clan is very strange in that even the golden core tier cultivators from the clan are able to wield these pseudo-celestial tools, and that's not even to mention the ancestors lurking behind the scenes. Sun Jiashu's cultivation base is nothing exceptional, but the Sun clan has 1 nascent tier ancestor and 3 golden core tier guest elders at just its ancestral residence alone, and one of those golden core tier cultivators recently signed another century-long contract with the Sun clan. Alongside Chu Yang, the Fu clan's premier guest elder who's cultivating on the dragon scaling platform, those 2 golden core tier cultivators are considered to be the 2 cultivators in the city that are most likely to reach the nascent tier. The Feng clan has no nascent tier chi refiner, but it does have 2 7th tier martial artists and a golden core swordsman. On top of that, it has very deep and established roots in the mortal empires and martial arts world of Eastern Treasured Vile Continent's southern region, so it's not to be looked down on. The Ho clan has only managed to establish a foothold in Old Dragon City, thanks to that branch descendant, who became a virtuous scholar Lakeview Academy. In the past, it was the weakest of the major clans, but that virtuous scholar suddenly became a noble scholar last spring, so the Ho clan's status has been significantly elevated over the previous half year. The Ho clan's ship route through the Dragon Channel had been taken over by the Feng clan, but they've since returned it, and with a great deal of additional compensation. As for the immortal sects that have been raised by the Ho clan, most of them are fence-sitters. The Ding clan situation is similar to the Ho clan's in that its success is built on the foundation of an outsider. For the Ho clan, it's a virtuous scholar who's become completely disillusioned with his own clansmen, while the Ding clan relies on a woman who no one had paid any attention to, but had somehow managed to marry into Parasol Leaf sect. On top of that, she's a direct lineal descendant of the Ding clan who's still very much connected to her clan, unlike the Ho clan's virtuous scholar. Last year, she returned to Old Dragon City with her husband, and they were accompanied by several Golden Core tier cultivators acting as their servants. Fan paused here momentarily as he reached out to Chan Ping'an and declared, "I'm thirsty." Chan Ping'an tossed him the sword nurturing gourd and said, "Just keep the gourd so you don't have to constantly ask me for it." Fan gladly accepted this proposal, and after taking a small sip of wine he continued, "Recently, 2 events have taken place that have completely turned Old Dragon City on its head. You already know about one of the 2 events, but I'm certain that you won't be able to guess what the other one is. The first event is the marriage alliance between the Jiang clan and the Fu clan. Right?" Chun Ping'an asked. Fu clan nodded as he replied. The dowry that the woman from the Jiang clan brought with her was tremendous. She has a personal maidservant who's a nascent tier swordswoman, so essentially, the Fu clan has gained a nascent tier swordswoman through her. On top of that, Fan heaved a faint sigh here, then took another sip of wine as he continued. Her dowry also included a young flood dragon that traveled all the way from the Jiang clan's manor to Old Dragon City along the seabed. Even though it's only at the Golden Core tier, given its ancient bloodline, it's no less powerful than a nascent tier cultivator. So that means that the Fu clan now has the makings to become the sole dominant force to rule over Old Dragon City, Chan Ping'an summarized. However, his brows then furrowed slightly as he asked, "But even with this dowry from the Cloud Forest Jiang clan and its alliance with your Fan clan, wouldn't it still be far too costly for the Fu clan to take over Old Dragon City? The Sun, Ho, Feng, and Ding clans will surely be forced to forge an alliance, and if a battle is to ensue, the city will be sure to suffer extensive damage." A wry smile appeared on Fan face as he sighed. "You're right. Initially, things were very tense, but no one seemed to be willing to escalate things into a true conflict. However, something unexpected has happened lately." "What happened?" Chun Ping'an asked. "It has something to do with Mr. Zheng from the Dust Medicinal Shop, which means that by extension, it also has something to do with our Fan clan," Fan sighed. Chun Ping'an remained silent, waiting for further elaboration. This time, Fan threw his head back and took a large swig of wine, then wiped his lips with the back of his hand. "Not long after you left, a woman from the shop was defiled by a direct lineal descendant of the Feng clan, and she died." Chun Ping'an offered no response to this. Upon hearing this news, a senior of our Fan clan responsible for overseeing our ancestral hall immediately went to personally inform Mr. Zheng of the situation. After that senior returned, he appeared to be quite relaxed and told my father that Mr. Zheng didn't seem to think that this was a big deal, and my father believed him. However, my sister's mother cautioned him that there was more to this than meets the eye, and she told him to be on his guard and help Mr. Zheng peel back the layers to see if there was some foul play involved. If someone was actively trying to target the Fu clan or Mr. Zheng, then action had to be taken right away to find out who the culprit was. However, my father didn't want to escalate the matter any further, and he said right now the other major clans outside of the Fu clan are beginning to forge an alliance, so if our Fan clan were to show our hand at a time, then we could easily be seen as the Fu clan's lapdog, and that could result in us being targeted by the other 4 major clans. I went to speak to my father about this once, and I was relegated to the ancestral hall for an entire month as punishment. During that time I even tasted some of the soil from the pouch that I kept under my bed. You really were lying to me. That stuff is completely inedible." Chun Ping'an could see that Fan was going to take another swig of wine, and he immediately grabbed the wine gourd back from him as he scolded. "That's enough. Drowning your sorrows is a myth. Don't believe in that crap." Fan nodded in response, then rubbed a hand over his face as he sighed. "I tried to sneak out of the ancestral hall several times, but I was caught every time. After a month, I heard that nothing had happened over at the Dust Medicinal Shop. I naturally didn't believe that, so I personally made a trip to the shop, and at the time Mr. Zheng was sitting outside the shop smoking his pipe. When he saw me, he gave me a cheerful wave, and I was dumbstruck at the time. After chatting with Mr. Zheng for a while, I discovered that it really did seem like the woman's death wasn't weighing on his mind at all. Honestly, I was a little angry when I left. A frustrated look appeared on Fan Air's face as he continued. I know that in the eyes of many people, including even my father, this is nothing more than a trivial incident, and I suppose it is in the grand scheme of things. In Old Dragon City, there aren't any problems that can't be resolved with money. Everyone's telling me that this is nothing important, and that I shouldn't worry about it, but I can't help but feel isn't just something that should be brushed off like nothing. You're right, Fan Air, Chen Ping'an said. This is not a trivial incident at all. This was the first time that someone had agreed with his stance on the matter, and he exhaled deeply before flashing Chen Ping'an a slightly forced smile. Even though Chen Ping'an had taken his gourd back from Fan Air, he didn't drink from it. He had barely drunk at all ever since he boarded the ship on the Heavenly Palace Peak, only having an occasional sip or two with Wei Xian and Lu Baixiang. What happened after that? Chen Ping'an asked. A smile finally appeared on Fan Air's face as he replied. Thankfully, Mr. Zheng didn't disappoint me. Having him as my Dao mentor is the biggest honor of my life. A dejected look then surfaced in his eyes as he continued. It's just that after Mr. Zheng stormed into the Feng clan, I was forbidden from setting foot outside the our clan's manor, so I could only hear about what Mr. Zheng did through some tidbits of information fed to me. Fan Air's eyes then lit up once again as he said, according to what I heard, Mr. Zheng went to the Feng clan's manor in broad daylight on the first day of the summer solstice and smashed the gate open with a single punch, then walked straight in and ordered everyone below the Golden Courtier to leave. The Feng clan was furious, and Mr. Zheng was confronted by a pair of Dragon Gate tier guest elders, both of whom he knocked out with a single punch each. After that, a 7th tier martial artist came out to challenge him, and once again, Mr. Zheng knocked him down with a single punch, except he never got back up. After that, the culprit was dragged out by a representative of the Feng clan, and he told Mr. Zheng that he could do whatever he wanted with the culprit as long as he spared his life. He could even break the culprit's arms and legs if he wanted, and the Feng clan wouldn't intervene. At the time, the Feng clan representative was accompanied by the Feng clan's Golden Core tier swordsman. Mr. Zheng didn't even spare a glance at the Feng clan representative or the culprit. Instead, he turned to the Golden Core tier swordsman, and he knocked him down with a single punch. Fan Air was brimming with excitement as he spoke, and he demanded, "Give me the wine." Chen Ping'an could only hand the wine gourd to him. Fan Air took a large swig of wine, then continued, "The Fan clan has no nascent tier cultivators, and the Golden Core tier swordsman wasn't willing to surrender, so he summoned his bonded flying sword, but it was shattered by Mr. Zheng. Well, that was as expected. What was rather strange was that Mr. Zheng didn't kill that little bastard on the spot. Instead, he said something in parting before traveling straight to the Fu clan to demand that Fu Donghai come out to take a punch from him. Only then did it become clear to everyone that this incident was something orchestrated by Fu Donghai, and he was one pulling the strings behind the scenes, so he was the one who was most deserving of punishment. I have to admit that he was a lot more courageous than that bastard from the Feng clan, and he really did come out to take a punch from Mr. Zheng. Unfortunately, he was able to survive thanks to his old dragon Rainbringer, and he was taken away by an old maidservant that no one had seen before. That must have been the maidservant who came to the Fan clan with that woman from the Cloud Forest Zhang clan, Chen Ping'an remarked. Fu Donghai was killing two birds with one stone here, driving a wedge between Zheng Dafeng and the Fan clan while also alienating the Fan clan, essentially forcing the Fan clan to ally itself with the other four major clans so that the battle could commence. However, what Fu Donghai didn't know was that Zheng Dafeng had the Yin soul with the Zhao surname by his side, and that Yin god was very adept at self-concealment and spiritual interrogation. With its set of skills, it was able to follow the leads to uncover Fu Donghai as the mastermind behind this incident. A slightly sullen look appeared on Fan Air's face, and he held the wine gourd in his hands as he continued. At the time, the Fu clan was at the very height of its powers. Clan leader Fu Qi had purchased a new pseudo-celestial tool from another continent, and after that came the marriage alliance with the Cloud Forest Zhang clan. Even if the Fu clan was willing to lay down its pride and have things blow over without issuing any retaliation, there was no way that the Zhang clan would be willing to let the Fu clan be humiliated right after their marriage alliance was established. Fan Air leaned back as he folded his hands behind the back of his own head, then continued, "After the event, I heard from my father that the old maidservant is an extremely accomplished nascent tier cultivator, and she's only one step away from reaching the upper 5 tiers. In fact, even Fu Qi with a pseudo-celestial tool at his disposal may only be able to fight with her on equal terms. In the beginning, I always thought that there was a very good chance that Mr. Zheng was a 7th-tier martial artist. After that, I felt like perhaps he was an 8th-tier martial artist. Only after this battle did I realize that he's actually an N-tier martial arts master. The Fu clan quickly called upon Chu Yang from the dragon scaling platform, the one said to be the #1 golden core tier cultivator in all of Old Dragon City. He was even more adept in battle than the golden core tier swordsman from the Feng clan, and I heard that this was the first opponent on that day that Mr. Zheng wasn't able to knock down with a single punch. With his first punch, he knocked Chu Yang back into retreat, then severely wounded him with his second. However, this proved to be a blessing, and Chu Yang was able to break through to the nascent tier on the spot. Well, not that it helped him much. He was still knocked down by Mr. Zheng's third punch. Chun Ping'an took a sip of wine. Tears suddenly began to well up in Fan Er's eyes as he sighed. That night, our Fan clan was in a state of complete chaos, and many of my seniors were heatedly debating how they should proceed. My father sorely regretted his inaction to this point, but he felt like given how far things had already escalated, it was too late to go and apologize to Mr. Zheng. Many of the seniors of our clan told him that the best course of action was to completely pledge our subordination to the Fu clan. It was clear that the Fu clan had intentions of making some big moves, and as long as the alliance forged by the other 4 major clans can be vanquished, even if our Fan clan suffers some severe repercussions in the process, it'll only take us less than a century at most to recover, and by that point we'll be the second most prominent clan of Old Dragon City. My mother, my sister, Fan Junmao, and her mother weren't able to enter the ancestral hall, but I was there, and I tried to convince my father not to heed the advice of the other seniors. However, all he did was get angry at me and tell me that he was the clan leader, and that my opinion on the matter was irrelevant. So what was the final decision that was reached in your ancestral hall? Chun Ping'an asked. Was it decided that you were going to abandon Zheng Dafeng and ally yourselves with the Fu clan to turn against the other 4 major clans, even though the Fu clan had plotted against you in secret? Fan Er shook his head in response. That was going to be the final decision, but for some reason they ended up changing their minds. Ultimately, my father declared that this matter was going to require further consideration, and no one seems to know why there was a change of heart. I went to ask both my mother and my sister's mother about this, but neither of them could tell me anything. After Chu Yang was defeated, he returned to the dragon scaling platform to recover from his injuries, but the Fu clan naturally wasn't just going to let things slide after being humiliated like that. Hence, Mr. Zheng was challenged by the nascent tier ancestor of the Fu clan, Fu Yang, and he was wielding one of the Fu clan's pseudo-celestial tools. The Qi refiners of the Fu clan combined their powers to conceal the battlefield, so no one knows exactly what happened, but by the time Mr. Zheng emerged from the Fu clan's manor, his entire body was covered in blood, and he raised his pinky finger to the Fu clan as a final parting gesture. On that same day, the Sun clan went back on its agreement with the other clans and pledged its allegiance to the Fu clan. The Feng clan contacted the Ho clan, and the two decided to support the Ding clan as their leader. The backbone of the Ding clan was that direct lineal descendant of Parasol Leaf Sect, and sure enough, a ship soon arrived from Parasol Leaf Sect. Only 2 people disembarked from the ship, but after that, the alliance led by the Ding clan became even more confident than back when the Sun clan was on their side. Parasol Leaf Sect was the #1 cultivation sect on Parasol Leaf Continent. Compared with Jade Tablet Sect, Parasol Leaf Sect was clearly superior, and they were situated in the north and the south of Parasol Leaf Continent, respectively. According to Jiang Shangzhen, if it weren't for Zuiyu's intervention, it would have most definitely been the cultivator from Parasol Leaf Sect who would have claimed the life of the great demon that had wreaked havoc in Planchette Writing Sect. Up to this point, Chun Ping'an had developed a rough idea of the current circumstances in Old Dragon City. No one could have anticipated the role that Zheng Dafeng played to drastically accelerate the unfolding circumstances in Old Dragon City. Essentially, he had forced all of the city's major clans to show their true colors, and in the process he had made the entire city his enemy. All for a woman who worked at his medicine shop. Chun Ping'an took another sip of wine. A wry smile appeared on Fan Er's face as he sighed. The Fu clan naturally wasn't just going to let things slide there, and clan leader Fu Qi paid a personal visit to Mr. Zheng to lay down a challenge. Early this winter, the two sides are going to clash on the dragon scaling platform. However, prior to that battle, the Parasol Leaf Sect disciple of the Ding clan paid a visit to the dust medicinal shop. No one knows exactly what happened, whether they intended to threaten or appease Mr. Zheng, but ultimately, the outcome was another battle, which took place on the street outside the dust medicinal shop. Some say Mr. Zheng took on 3 opponents at once, some say he fought them one after another. In any case, he sustained even more injuries, so Fu Qi declared that their battle would be postponed to the end of the year. At that point, the two sides were going to engage in a battle of life and death on the dragon scaling platform, and there's not much time left until then. In the end, Fan Er's voice trailed off into a dejected silence. He lifted the curtain to take a glance outside. Right as the carriage was about to enter the outer city of Old Dragon City, Chen Pingyan replaced the stopper on his sword nurturing gourd, then said to Fan Er, "I understand the situation now. Let's part ways here. Given the current circumstances, it'll be very inappropriate for me to go to your Fan clan." Fan Er was just about to object when Chen Pingyan smiled and said, "Don't be a fool. You've already tried to eat soil once, surely that's taught you not to be stupid. If you insist on inviting me to your manor, all that's going to do is make you look like a bad son and me a bad friend, so there's really no point." Chen Pingyan then pointed at his own heart as he continued, "Even if we part ways, you'll always be with me." Before Fan Er had a chance to say anything, Chen Pingyan had already lifted the curtain and instructed, "Stop the carriage." Fan Er was just about to stand up to follow Chen Pingyan out of the carriage when the latter set down the curtain and said, "Stay where you are, don't make this seem like such a big deal. It's not what you think. All I'm going to do is pay the dust medicinal shop a visit. The world is a very chaotic place, and there are injustices taking place everywhere. I can't go around saving everyone. I just want to go and see Zheng Dafeng." Fan Er glared at him as he reminded, "Don't forget that you owe me a piece of Chinaware, and we also have to go out drinking for real sometime." Chen Pingyan had already jumped out of the carriage, leaving Fan Er to sit on his own in a daze. After leaving the carriage, Chen Pingyan quickly instructed Pei Qian and the others to leave their carriages as well. As the procession of Fan clan carriages entered the city, Pei Qian turned to Chen Pingyan and asked, "What happened? Was he too stingy and didn't want to give us free food and accommodation? I didn't think he looked like that type of person. He's just dropping us off here because we have to go see someone else first." Chen Pingyan replied with a smile. After issuing the entrance fee for the outer city, Chen Pingyan realized that he would have to pay an entrance fee for the inner city as well, and he was thinking to himself that surely Zheng Dafeng would compensate him for that. Chen Pingyan knew the way to the dust medicinal shop, and he also had a very good memory, but even so, Old Dragon City was so massive that by the time he reached the dust medicinal shop, it was already close to dusk. After entering that small alley with Pei Qian and the others in tow, he spotted Zheng Dafeng sitting on a little stool at the entrance of the shop, smoking on a pipe. He choked on a lungful of smoke, then erupted into a coughing fit as he remarked, "This is certainly a rare guest." Chen Pingyan took a glance at Zheng Dafeng, then looked at the empty shop behind him and sat down onto the doorstep as he asked, "Is the shop hiring at the moment?" "I don't have money to hire anyone," Zheng Dafeng snapped. "Lend me 40 grain coins and I'll work at your shop. I'll return the money to you at some point," Chen Pingyan said. Zheng Dafeng turned to look at Chen Pingyan with an exasperated expression as he scoffed. "What? Just because you've gone up a little in cultivation base and changed into some new clothes, you start talking about grain coins like they're normal copper coins? Get out of here. I'm not in the mood to be joking around with you." He then turned to look at Sui Yubian with a serious expression as he continued, "Having said that, if she wants to stay at the shop, then she's more than welcome. She can have free meals and a roof over her head. As for wages, I'll pay her when I have the money." Sui Yubian remained completely expressionless, displaying no reaction to Zheng Dafeng's provocative remarks. Chen Pingyan waved at Pei Qian, then pointed at the shop as he said, "We're staying here. Carry our luggage inside. Then pick out a room for yourself." Pei Qian let loose an elated cry upon hearing this, and she pulled out her beloved treasure pagoda demon-suppressing talisman before pressing it to her own forehead, then rushed into the shop. She was exhausted from walking through Old Dragon City, and she had been dying to bring out this talisman. Wei Xian and the others also made their way into the shop, while Zheng Dafeng turned to Qian Pingyan with an exasperated expression as he sighed. Are you not aware of what things are like in Old Dragon City right now? Or are you so delusional that you think that you can play the hero here? Why don't you take a guess? Qian Pingyan asked with a smile. Zheng Dafeng stared at Qian Pingyan in silence for a long while, then turned away and continued puffing out clouds of smoke as he said in a muffled voice. Fine, stay if you want. The old man has bet a lot on you, so he most likely won't let you die so soon. If worst comes to worst, I'll just have to get Brother Zhao to look after you. It's not like he'll be able to help at all on the dragon scaling platform anyway. Ain Soul appeared under the shade in the alley, then said to Qian Pingyan, don't get involved in this mess. There's a chance that both Zheng Dafeng and I die on the dragon scaling platform. Qian Pingyan turned his gaze back to Zheng Dafeng, then asked, what happened? Zheng Dafeng took a draught from his pipe, then smacked his lips as he replied, don't think of me as some selfless saint. I had no choice but to do what I did because it concerned my great Tao. If you'll recall, I was stumped by my 9th tier bottleneck for a long time a while ago, and half the reason I was finally able to make the breakthrough was because of you, while the other half was a book that I took from that woman. I stole it from her, and when she confronted me about it, I could only tell her that I was borrowing it. After that, I accidentally destroyed the book, and after finally making my breakthrough, I thought I would buy a new one for her. It was going to cost me over 40 copper coins, so I really didn't want to buy it, and I stalled for a few days. Now, I'll never get to return the book to her. A dark look appeared on his face, which was enshrouded in a cloud of smoke, and he continued, back then, all I owed you was 5 copper coins, so how could I just stand by and do nothing when I owed her that much? I had to do something. Besides, if it wasn't for me, she would have been able to find someone to marry in 2 or 3 more years. Even if she'd found a bad husband, at the very least, she would still be alive. Living a bad life is better than dying a good death. That's always been an adage that I've subscribed to. Not to mention, she didn't even get to die a good death. Old man Zhao was able to gather her soul, and all she did was cry and tell me that she didn't blame me, and that she wanted me to look after her family for her. No, she didn't. She said that she likes you, but she didn't feel worthy of you because she had been soiled. She said that if she were to meet you again in the next life, then she wanted to fall in love with you again, but she wanted to be more brave. The Ain Soul contradicted in an indifferent voice. Zheng Dafeng raised his head with a furious expression, and a formidable aura swept through the entire alley as he snapped, piss off. The Ain Soul remained unfazed, but it did as it was told, slowly fading away. Here, Qian Pingyan said as he tossed a vial at Zheng Dafeng, but the latter merely allowed the vial to drop to the ground before his eyes. Qian Pingyan stood up and picked up the vial of seeded meditation pills from the ground, then handed it to Zheng Dafeng as he said, this is a vial of pills that I received from a nascent tier earth immortal from Parasol Leaf Continent. There are 5 in there. Eat as many of them as you can. If you die on the dragon scaling platform, I'll ask Old Man Yang for the money, but if you survive, then you owe me. Zheng Dafeng raised his head as he asked with furrowed brows. What do you want, Qian Pingyan? How does this have anything to do with you? Qian Pingyan continued to hold the vial out to Zheng Dafeng as he replied, I've been working tirelessly on my fist and sword techniques. In the past it was all for survival, but now that survival is no longer a concern, what do you think I want? How the hell am I supposed to know? Zheng Dafeng harumphed. I already told you this last time, we are not the same type of people, so our paths are destined not to align. I'm not here because I suddenly felt we are destined to be brothers, Qian Pingyan said. Do you want to hear the scholar's version of my reasons or the country bumpkins? Zheng Dafeng simply ignored him. Qian Pingyan remained completely unbothered as he continued. How can one stand up against injustices in life? In the face of minor injustices, you can always buy some wine to drown your sorrows, while in the face of major injustices, you ought to draw your sword. That's the scholar's version. To put that in more frank terms, I'm pissed the hell off, so I'm gonna beat the shit out of them. Otherwise, what's the point in practicing these fist and sword techniques? Zheng Dafeng was stunned into silence, and he was trying to make a connection between the young man before him and the young boy from back in Jewel's small world, but it was clear that he was struggling in that endeavor. In the end, all he could do was grumble. Calm down. You spat all over my face. After a brief silence, Zheng Dafeng accepted the vial of seeded meditation pills from Chen Ping'an. If Chen Ping'an wasn't exaggerating about the quality of these pills, then just 2 pills would be enough to suppress his injuries. However, making a full recovery was not such a simple matter, and the root of his problems couldn't be remedied with just a pill or 2. Pei Qian was looking into the room from the doorstep, and she was furious as she raised her hiking pole and yelled, "What the hell's wrong with you? If you keep being so ungrateful, I'm going to get really mad." Zheng Dafeng put the vial away, then turned to her with an amused grin as he replied, "I'm absolutely quaking in my boots. Where has a beautiful and heroic maiden like you come from?" Pei Qian cleared her throat, then stood up straight and slammed the bottom of her hiking pole into the ground as she declared, "Listen up. My name is Pei Qian, and I'm a princess who's fallen on hard times. Chen Ping'an is my master, and I'm the founding disciple of our sect." Pei Qian no longer dared to proclaim herself Chen Ping'an's daughter in front of others for fear of a beating. Zheng Dafeng stared at Pei Qian for a moment with his mouth slightly agape, then turned to Chen Ping'an, wondering how this strange duo had come together. "Let's go inside. I have some important matters to discuss with you," Chen Ping'an said. "Just because I'm willing to get involved in this doesn't mean I actually have a death wish," Chen Ping'an snapped. "How many Golden Core tier and Nascent tier Earth Immortals does the opposing camp have? Which powers are fence-sitters? Which Earth Immortals will actually take part in the battle? Will there potentially be any cultivators of the upper 5 tiers getting involved? These are all things that I have to familiarize myself with. On top of that, I also have to learn about the geomancy of Old Dragon City and the escape routes that we can take near Dragon Scaling Platform, and you have to tell me about your battles against the Fu clan, the Feng clan, and the Ding clan." Zheng Dafeng was developing a headache from the barrage of questions, and he pulled out the vial of seeded meditation pills and thrust it back at Chen Ping'an as he grumbled, "I don't want your stuff. I told you we're not the same type of people." Chen Ping'an paid no heed to him as he strode directly into the shop. The Ingsoul with the Zhao surname had already appeared in the shop, and he smiled as he said, "I can tell you everything you want to know." Zheng Dafeng heaved a forlorn sigh, then habitually scratched his own crotch before picking up his stool and returning to the shop. From there he followed Chen Ping'an to the backyard. After entering Zheng Dafeng's room, Chen Ping'an and the Ingsoul with the Zhao surname sat down across from each other. Pei Qian didn't dare to sit on the main seat at the head of the table between them. Instead, she sat down on the bench facing the entrance of the room, leaving the main seat vacant for Zheng Dafeng. As for Wei Xian and the others, Chen Ping'an instructed them to bring chairs for themselves and listen in on the conversation as well. Prior to taking a seat, Zheng Dafeng finally displayed some hospitality befitting of a host, placing a large handful of sunflower seeds onto a dish before setting the dish down in front of Pei Qian, who took a glance at Chen Ping'an, then reluctantly thanked Zheng Dafeng. After that, Zheng Dafeng brought out 2 large dishes of salted peanuts and beef jerky for himself. Pei Qian looked at the sunflower seeds in her small dishes, then looked at the feast that Zheng Dafeng had laid out for himself. Even his dishes were larger than hers was. Pei Qian gave him a thumbs up as she praised in a facetious manner, "What a generous and hospitable host you are." "It's all right, you don't have to thank me," Zheng Dafeng replied with a wide grin. Pei Qian sat down onto her stool in a huff to eat her sunflower seeds in a disgruntled fashion. Chen Ping'an set his sword-nurturing gourd down onto the table and asked, "Are you able to drink?" Zheng Dafeng was chewing on some peanuts as he shook his head and replied, "I'm afraid not. Drinking is strictly off-limits for me in the near future. In 6 days during the major cold solar term, Zheng Dafeng and Fu Qi will engage in a battle to the death on the Fu clan's Dragon Scaling Platform," the Ingsoul with the Zhao surname said. "Only one of the 2 will be able to leave the Dragon Scaling Platform alive on that day. If Zheng Dafeng dies, then all we'll have to do is gather his body, and we won't be in any danger. After killing a 9th-tier martial artist, the Fu clan will have already won back its lost honor, and it won't be so petty as to insist on targeting the dust medicinal shop." A wry smile then appeared on the Ingsoul's face as he continued, "Of course, I can't just stand by and watch Zheng Dafeng die on the Dragon Scaling Platform. If he dies, then I won't even be able to continue existing as a Ingsoul, let alone protect my descendants. Hence, even if the Dragon Scaling Platform is rife with restrictions on the day, I'll still have to venture into the fray, but if I'm forced to do that, then it means that all is already lost, and I'll only be slightly delaying Zheng Dafeng's inevitable death. If you decide to enter the battle as well, then everything will descend into complete chaos. Setting aside all of the golden core and nascent tier cultivators, even all of the middle 5-tier cultivators from all of the city's 5 major clans aside from the Fan clan will most likely throw their hats into the ring as well. I'm already aware of that. That would be the worst possible outcome. What's the best possible outcome? Chen Ping'an asked. The Yin soul was rather taken aback. It seemed that Chen Ping'an had changed a lot over the course of his trip to Stalactite Mountain and back. However, as a Yin soul, his facial features were quite blurry, so the surprise on his face wasn't very noticeable. The Yin soul continued. After defeating Chu Yang, Zheng Dafeng fought against a nascent tier Fu clan ancestor wielding a pseudo-celestial tool. Having been in Old Dragon City for so long, the Fu clan has transformed its manor into a small world much like an academy or a Taoist temple. Hence, that battle was a very arduous one for Zheng Dafeng. I was just holding back, Zheng Dafeng scoffed. My target from the very beginning was always to beat the crap out of Fu Qi. If I hadn't intentionally suppressed my own cultivation base, I would have stomped that old fart into the ground and spat on his face. Chen Ping'an was rather skeptical, but the Yin god smiled and corroborated. Zheng Dafeng's telling the truth, he really was holding back because he didn't want to reveal his true cultivation base too soon. Chen Ping'an nodded in response. This did seem like something that Zheng Dafeng would do. If Li Er had been in his place, there was no way that he would have done the same thing. Back in Jewel's small world, Zheng Dafeng was actually probably the most learned individual with the exceptions of Mr. Qi, Old Man Yang, and Li Shisheng. The more one knew, the greater the heights that one would strive to reach. Due to this burden of knowledge, his fist intent turned out to be not as pure as Li Er's. After all, desire often narrowed one's field of view, and that was why it had been so difficult for Zheng Dafeng to make his 9th-tier breakthrough, to the point that Chen Ping'an and that chapter of sincerity had to serve as his Dao mentors. In that case, who was it that hurt him so badly? Was it the direct disciple of Parasol Leaf Sect who married into the Ding clan? Why did a battle break out between them in the first place? Chen Ping'an asked. Zheng Dafeng's expression darkened slightly as he bit down viciously onto a piece of beef jerky, while the Yin soul smiled and replied. He came to the dust medicinal shop out of the blue and gave a long-winded spiel from the get-go. In summary, his name is Du Yan, and he's the eldest grandson of Parasol Leaf Sect's patriarch. Apparently, he once came to Old Dragon City under the guise of a false identity, and at the time the ancestors of that young man from the Feng clan served as lackeys for him. That young man is the only male clansman of his generation, so he wanted Zheng Dafeng to do him a favor and spare the lineage of the Feng clan. As long as Zheng Dafeng was willing to do so, he promised that Parasol Leaf Sect would side with the dust medicinal shop. The Yin soul took a glance at Zheng Dafeng, who had been sneaking furtive glances at Chen Ping'an's sword-nurturing gourd this entire time, and a cold sneer appeared on his face as he scoffed. He's only a 9th-tier martial artist, yet he thinks he's invincible. He knew that there was an unpolished Jade-tier cultivator with Du Yan at the time, yet he openly insulted him to his face, saying that it was pathetic that an upper 5 tiers cultivator like him was willing to serve as a lapdog for someone else. How do you feel now, Zheng Dafeng? Do you want to drink some wine? If you do, then go ahead, you're invincible anyway, right? So what if Fu Qi is a nascent tier cultivator wielding at least one celestial tool, while also enhanced by the dragon scaling platform? You'll still knock him down with just a single punch. Zheng Dafeng rolled his eyes and rested a foot on a bench as he shrugged in a nonchalant manner. However, not being able to drink wine really was rather torturous for him. What was even more frustrating was that he had already told Chen Ping'an that he wasn't going to drink, and Chen Ping'an wasn't drinking himself, but for some reason, he had set the sword-nurturing gourd down onto the table and even removed the stopper for some reason. By the way, Fan told me that Zheng Dafeng visited the Feng clan and said something to that young man. What did you say? Chen Ping'an asked with a curious expression. Zheng Dafeng tossed away the peanut shells in his hand, then replied with a cold expression. I told him that I'm going to make him regret ever being born. Old Man Zhao knows some forbidden techniques that'll ensure that he suffers for the rest of his life. Only now did Chen Ping'an turn around to face Wei Xian and the others as he smiled and said, I forgot to introduce everyone. This is Zheng Dafeng, and he comes from the same hometown as me. He's a 9th-tier martial artist, and he was the gatekeeper of our town. Back then he offered me a paying job, so I'm grateful to him." Zhang Dafeng cupped his fist in a salute toward Wei Xian and the others. "The former owner of my flying sword 15th is his master. Over the past few decades, his master has only taken on 2 disciples. Zhang Dafeng is now at the 9th tier, while his senior brother has already reached the 10th tier. And he did so with extreme ease. It was really about as routine as eating and drinking for him," Qian Ping'an continued. Pei Qian's eyes immediately lit up upon hearing this. This cultivation method suited her perfectly. If she could become a 10th-tier martial artist just by eating and drinking, then she would never have to read or make transcriptions again. If she could sneak in a few sips of wine here and there on top of that, just the mere thought was getting her excited. After directing some mockery at Zhang Dafeng, the Yin Soul continued. "The best possible outcome would be if Zhang Dafeng managed to defeat Fu Qi. If that were to happen, then we would have to consider how we're going to take Zhang Dafeng and return here alive. The journey from the dragon scaling platform back to the dust medicinal shop will undoubtedly be an extremely perilous one. But who knows? Maybe the heavens will smile down upon us. Looking at the current state of affairs, the Cloud Forest Zhang clan poses the biggest threat to us. But at the same time, the resounding reputation of the Cloud Forest Zhang clan provides us with a slim chance at survival. If Zhang Dafeng were to survive and return from the dragon scaling platform, then no one would dare to step in and stand up for the Cloud Forest Zhang clan or the Fu clan. Even the Fu clan wouldn't dare to revoke the agreement and continue to come after Zhang Dafeng. As for whether they'll make a move in private, if they do, then it'll most likely be on the way back from the dragon scaling platform." The Yin Soul paused here momentarily, then asked, "Is that woman really not willing to intervene?" The person that he was referring to was the main reason why Zhang Dafeng had decided to leave Jewel's small world and come to Old Dragon City. Zhang Dafeng pursed his lips as he scoffed. "She already made her stance clear before I went to the Feng clan. At the very most, she's only going to ensure that the Fan clan won't screw me over, and that the Fu clan won't be able to wield the Sea of Clouds above Old Dragon City. As for everything else, she said that if I have a death wish, then she'll gladly watch me die." These were not Fan Juanmao's exact words. At the time, what she had actually said to him was, "You're always growing older but seemingly never any wiser. You're still just as useless as ever, so you deserve to be nailed to a pillar again." Of course, Zhang Dafeng wasn't going to relay these exact words to Qian Ping'an as it would be far too embarrassing for him. Even the Yin Soul with the Zhao surname wasn't able to eavesdrop on this conversation. Fan Juanmao's rapid cultivation base progression had always been extremely strange. There was clearly far more to her than met the eye. Aside from Fu Qi, everyone in Old Dragon City was utterly perplexed by why the Fan clan had decided to go against all conventional wisdom and refused to submit to the Fu clan. In the Fan clan, there was someone who had more authority than Fan Air's father. In fact, their authority even outweighed the collective voices of everyone in the Fan clan's ancestral hall. And that person was not some hidden nascent tier ancestor. Well, at the nascent tier they were, but certainly not an ancestor of the clan. And that person was none other than Fan Air's half-sister, Fan Junmao. However, on this occasion, she hadn't chosen to side with Zhang Dafeng. Instead, she had told him that she was only going to act as a neutral bystander, even if it meant watching Zhang Dafeng die. Zhang Dafeng knew that she wasn't joking around. The Yin Soul then gave Qian Ping'an an introduction of all of the Golden Core tier and Nascent tier Earth Immortals of all of the 5 major clans outside of the Fan clans, as well as the notable mystical abilities and artifacts of those clans. Compared with what Fan Air had told him in the carriage, the Yin Soul only listed 3 additional people, and none of them were at the nascent tier, so this was great news. "I can secure a geomancy map of Old Dragon City and the dragon scaling platform by tonight," the Yin Soul offered, and Qian Ping'an naturally wasn't going to refuse. The Yin Soul then took a glance at Zhang Dafeng, and he suddenly erupted into a furious tirade. "Goddammit, why couldn't I have been assigned with the task of protecting Qian Ping'an instead? I wouldn't have to constantly wipe his ass for him, and even if I do wind up in a battle because of him, at least it'll be one where I can really go all out and not have to think too much, instead of having to hatch one plot after another for what's basically a hopeless cause." Zhang Dafeng took a glance at him out of the corner of his eye as he scoffed. "Have you forgotten all of the comfortable days that you were able to spend with me?" The Yin Soul harumphed cold in response. Are there any unpolished jade tier cultivators lurking behind the scenes? If so, how many? Chun Ping'an asked. How many unpolished jade tier cultivators do you think there are on our eastern treasured vile continent? Let me count them off for you, Zheng Dafeng chuckled. Ruanxiong of our jewel small world is one. The Song clan is a powerful force, is it not? It's conquered close to half of eastern treasured vile continent, but they still worship that old swordsmith like a bodhisattva, do they not? The old ancestor of great Sui nation's Gao clan is another one. He likes to go around parading as a storyteller, and even he didn't dare to take a punch from my senior brother. There's also Wei Jin of Wind Snow Temple, but he's a prodigy that only comes around once in 1,000 years, perhaps even longer. There's definitely one on True Martial Mountain, but he never likes to show himself. The leader of Divine Edict sect only recently reached the immortal tier, and attained the Heavenly Lord title. The Mountain Master of Lakeview Academy may not even be at the upper 5 tiers yet. So there you have it. How many unpolished jade tier cultivators are there? Of course, there are also people like Heavenly Lord Xiesher of Northern Complete Reed Continent, Sword Immortal Chaoshi of Southern World Continent, and the Mahist Wandering Hero Su Ra, but they don't count as cultivators of our Eastern Treasured Vile Continent. Why do Heavenly Lord Xiesher and Sword Immortal Chaoshi not count? Chun Ping'an asked. Both of them came out of our jewel small world, and they may have made their reputations on other continents, but they still share the same hometown as us. In particular, Chaoshi's ancestral residence is also on Clay Vase Alley, and I ran into him there last time. I have to say he's not a great guy. He tampered with the door gods at my house, but thankfully Li Baoping's brother saw through what he did and made things right again. Zheng Dafeng couldn't argue with this, so he could only chew on some jerky in silence. Wei Xian and the others had been trying to remain composed this entire time, but they were really struggling to maintain their composure at this point. Just how ridiculous a place was this hometown of Chun Ping'an's? What kind of fucking town had a gatekeeper who was a 9th tier martial artist, who in turn had a 10th tier martial artist as his senior brother? And it was also home to a sword immortal and a Taoist heavenly lord? Was there any ordinary person in that town? Having just been rebuked by Chun Ping'an, Zheng Dafeng wanted to redeem himself and he asked, "All right, but how many 10th tier martial artists are there on Eastern Treasured Vile Continent? There are only 2, right? Li Er and Song Chongjing. I'm going to be next, right? Surely your fist technique instructor isn't also a 10th tier martial artist?" Chun Ping'an hesitated momentarily, then said in a truthful fashion, "Honestly, I think he is." Zheng Dafeng rubbed a hand over his own face, then yelled in indignation, "Well, I almost progressed straight to the 10th tier from the pinnacle of the 8th tier. How about that? Has anyone ever done that before? Then how about you progress to the 10th tier right here for me? We'd have nothing to worry about then," Chun Ping'an chuckled. "I wouldn't even have to go to the dragon scaling platform then. I'll just stay in the dust medicinal shop and cook up a big celebratory feast for you. How about that?" Zheng Dafeng had no response to this. If it were so easy to reach the 10th tier, then why would Li Er have left Jewel Small World? For pure martial artists, the difference between the 9th and 10th tiers was rather similar to that between the 12th and 13th tiers for swordsmen. As for the 11th tier for martial artists and 14th tier for swordsmen, those tiers were only really ever seen in legends. Those 2 bottlenecks were even more diabolical than that of the 5th and 6th tiers and the 10th and 11th tiers for chi refiners. Zheng Dafeng was an extremely ambitious man, but even he didn't dare to aim for the martial god tier. The Yin soul with the Zhao surname was feeling very pleased. It seemed like Chun Ping'an knew exactly how to push Zheng Dafeng's buttons. Chun Ping'an turned to the Yin soul and asked, "Is there something special about this dust medicinal shop?" "Of course," the Yin soul replied with a smile. "The Divine Lord instructed me to choose this place for a reason. Once the formation is activated, my cultivation base can be elevated to the unpolished jade tier here. Even then, it's only a way for you to elevate your own cultivation base at the cost of good karma, and you won't be able to keep it up for long," Zheng Dafeng sighed. "Do you really think I haven't been doing anything useful this entire time that we've been in Old Dragon City?" The Yin soul scoffed. "All you've been doing is sunbathing all day and waiting for celestial maidens to fly over your head. But I've actually been applying my time effectively. If we can make it through this month, then perhaps things will take a turn for the better." All right, let's tally up the people that we have on our side then, Chen Ping'an said with a smile. Zheng Dafeng popped a handful of salted peanuts into his own mouth, then asked, "Who are you referring to? Are we not already all in this room?" Pei Qian pointed at herself with a joyful smile as she asked, "I count as well? But I still haven't mastered my unrivaled swordsmanship yet." It was a rare moment of self-awareness from Pei Qian. "I disagree, Heroine Pei. You are actually the backbone of our group, so do not look down on yourself," Zheng Dafeng said in a serious voice. Pei Qian gladly accepted the compliment, and she pushed her empty dish at Zheng Dafeng as she demanded, "Get me some more sunflower seeds." Zheng Dafeng really did oblige to her request, making his way into the side room before returning with a large handful of sunflower seeds that he tossed into Pei Qian's dish. Due to how small the dish was, the handful of sunflowers was made to look very plentiful in comparison, and Pei Qian's impression of Zheng Dafeng improved slightly. Finally, Chen Ping'an took his first sip of wine, and after setting down the sword-nurturing gourd, 15th flew out from within, following which Chen Ping'an brought out the jade tablet minimization treasure that Zheng Dafeng had given him, and he smiled as he said, "There are a lot of people in Old Dragon City who think that money is everything, aren't there? I don't have much money right now, but I do have quite a few precious belongings. This Dao robe is called Golden Sweet Wine, and it was left behind by an ancient immortal. Would you be able to wear it? Also, I have some demon binding chains crafted from the whiskers of a nascent tier flood dragon from the Flood Dragon Trench. Will that be useful to you?" Zheng Dafeng shook his head in response. "Once you reach the 3 mind-tempering tiers, you'll come to understand that these things will only hinder you. Perhaps these things can save your life, but if I were to use them, then they would only send me to my death." Chen Ping'an nodded in response, then pulled out a large stack of pre-inscribed talismans as he continued, "I don't think you'll have any use for Yang Energy Illumination talismans. If the dragon-slaying platform has been made to be like a blessed land by the Fu clan, then a barrier-shattering talisman most likely won't work either. I also have this treasure pagoda demon-suppressing talisman and lock-slashing talisman, but that's specifically to be used on flood dragons. Oh, this sword-suppressing talisman is of quite a high caliber. It was inscribed for me by a friend, and it'll be able to suppress even the bonded flying sword of a nascent tier swordsman for a short time." The Yin soul with the Zhao surname could feel a slight sense of pressure just at the sight of the stack of talismans, particularly the Azure Sword Suppressing Talisman. Even though it was a talisman that specially targeted Earth Immortal swordsmen, it still made him feel extremely apprehensive. "Have you been robbing people non-stop on this entire trip to Stalactite Mountain?" Zheng Dafeng exclaimed with a stunned expression. "This one contains the immature golden core of a water demon from Parasol Leaf Continent's Burial River. This one contains the nascent tier golden core of that old flood dragon from the Flood Dragon Trench, and this one contains the golden core of a 12th tier great demon." Zheng Dafeng turned to stare at the Yin soul, then pointed at the porcelain vase that contained the golden core of the 12th tier great demon as he asked, "Do you believe what the fuck he's saying?" The Yin soul shook his head, then nodded as he replied, "I wouldn't believe it if it were someone else, but seeing as it's Chen Ping'an we're talking about, I'll say I'm on the fence." "Can any of these things help you?" Chen Ping'an asked. "Hold on, let me think for a minute," Zheng Dafeng said, then fell into deep thought. "If I had known that you had so many precious belongings, I would have never let you into this room. Why are you doing this?" The Yin soul sighed. "Seriously, why are you doing this?" The Yin soul repeated in an exaggerated manner. "You can just treat this as a deal that I'm making with Divine Lord Yang," Chen Ping'an said with a calm expression. "Either I lose everything, or I make an absolute killing." The Yin soul merely shook his head and offered no response, clearly not convinced. "What do you guys say?" Chen Ping'an asked as he turned around. "What else can I do but follow your lead?" Wei Xian replied in an indifferent manner. Sui Yubian rested her sword across her lap, then said with a bright gleam in her eyes, "In addition to a seated meditation pill, I also wanted a fire dragon pill and a rainbringer pill. I always relish the opportunity to slay an immortal or two," Julien said with a smile. "If I could call the shots here, then I would naturally want to leave Old Dragon City right away, but seeing as you've already decided to stay, then I also want a fire dragon pill and a rainbringer pill. Once we obtain the geomancy map of Old Dragon City, I can help map out the best routes to take," Lu Baixiang said. Thank you, everyone, Qian Ping'an said as he cupped his fist in a grateful salute. He then turned back to Zheng Dafeng and asked, do you think the 4 of them will be able to make any progress in their cultivation base over the next few days? Zheng Dafeng nodded as he replied, I can see that one of them is at the 7th tier, while the other 3 are all at the pinnacle of the 6th tier. All of them are true pure martial artists, and honestly I don't even know where you managed to recruit them from. The one at the Vajrabhati tier can easily consolidate her cultivation base over the next few days, but it'll be very difficult for the other 3 to make breakthroughs in the same time frame. Having said that, they can definitely still make improvements. As long as they can survive this ordeal, their martial arts cultivation will definitely benefit immensely from the experience. I can spar with them over the next few days. As for how much of my fist intent they'll be able to absorb, that'll be up to them. Wei Xian and the others remained completely expressionless upon hearing this, and Zheng Dafeng couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Normal 6th and 7th tier martial artists would have been extremely grateful for the opportunity to be able to spar with a 9th tier martial artist, yet they didn't seem to appreciate the opportunity at all. Unbeknownst to him, all 4 of them had extensive histories that made them far different from the average martial artist of their cultivation base. On the battlefield, Wei Xian was a one-man force of nature who could oppose an entirely mighty army on his own. Liu Baixiang was a man of many exceptional talents, and he strove to be the best in everything in the lotus flower-blessed land aside from martial arts, including things like playing musical instruments, playing Go, writing calligraphy, and making tea. Sui Yubian was obsessive in her pursuit of swordsmanship, striving wholeheartedly toward the goal of ascension. As for Zhu Lian, beneath his amicable facade was a complete and utter madman. Even if all of the martial artists under the heavens were to turn on him at once, he would still be more than happy to face them with his fists. Zheng Dafeng was rather looking forward to the sparring matches that he was going to have against these 4. A serious look appeared on Qian Ping'an's face as he said, I want to refine a bonded item. Would it be possible for you to find someone to purchase one for me? It has to be made certain that whatever materials that are sourced haven't been tampered with. If I can pull it off, then that'll essentially grant me an extra life. The Yin soul turned to Zheng Dafeng, and after a brief moment of contemplation the latter replied, I have to ask someone. If she agrees, then it can be done. A smile then suddenly appeared on Zheng Dafeng's face as he asked, I trust her, do you trust me? I trust your master, Qian Ping'an replied, rendering Zheng Dafeng speechless once again. The Yin soul rose to his feet as he smiled and said, I'll go find a few more geomancy maps. Qian Ping'an turned to Pei Qian as he said, You sleep in the same room as Sui Yubian, while Wei Xian and the others will have to stay in the same room. I can sleep on the floor in the shop, but if the materials are gathered, then I'll sleep on the floor with big sister Sui Yubian. Pei Qian volunteered. Sui Yubian and the others raised no objections to this. In the face of the upcoming battle, these were all completely trivial matters. As night fell, Qian Ping'an dragged a long bench into the courtyard. Sui Yubian and the others also made their way out into the courtyard after taking their pills. Zheng Dafeng had one hand clasped behind his back and one hand in front of his belly as he smiled and said, When facing a cultivator of the same tier, a pure martial artist must ensure that a single punch is enough to end the battle, so long as the opponent is within 100 feet. I don't know anything about the 4 of you, but at the very least, I'm going to treat you as 4 7th-tier chi refiners for now. The 4 of you can come at me all at once to save time. None of the 4 took even a single step forward. An exasperated look appeared on Zheng Dafeng's face as he asked, Do you not think a 9th-tier martial artist like myself is worthy of facing all 4 of you at once? Do you feel like it's embarrassing to gang up on me? Pei Qian dragged over a little stool and sat down beside Qian Ping'an. Zheng Dafeng turned to Qian Ping'an, and the latter extended a hand, gesturing for him to do as he pleased. All right, if none of you are going to attack, then I'll be taking the initiative. As soon as Zheng Dafeng's voice trailed off, he abruptly vanished from the spot, and a dull thump rang out as he threw 4 punches at almost the exact same time. Sui Yubian, Wei Xian, Liu Baixiang, and Julian each took 1 to 3 steps backward. An impressed look appeared on Zheng Dafeng's face as he remarked, All you have very solid foundations. Qian Ping'an, where on earth did you find these servants and this maidservant? I also want a few, particularly someone as beautiful as this maidservant of yours. Sui Yubian was the first of the four to spring into action, lashing out with her sword. She was followed by Zhu Lian, who pounced through the air, while Wei Xian and Lu Baixiang moved to the flanks, preparing to back up Sui Yubian and Zhu Lian when required. Their tacit understanding with each other meant that there was no need for any verbal communication, and this was how it was supposed to be, given that they had all been the most powerful figure in the Lotus Flower small world at some point. You can take a closer look if you're interested, Chen Ping'an said. Pei Qian raised her hand to offer a fistful of sunflower seeds to Chen Ping'an, to which the latter shook his head in response. Pei Qian withdrew her hand and continued munching on sunflower seeds as she shook her head and said, I'm not interested. They're nowhere near your level, Fa. Master. In private, she called him father, but when others were present, she called him master. Pei Qian felt like she had truly grasped the teachings of the books that she had read. After all, as the saying went, a master for a day, a father for a lifetime. You're wrong, Chen Ping'an said. In terms of pure martial arts cultivation base, I'm still lacking compared with the four of them. At the moment, I'm only at the 5th tier. It's just that I've built up a great foundation from all of the grueling battles that I've endured. As a result, I can break through my 6th tier bottleneck at any time. A great foundation in Chen Ping'an's words was no less glowing a piece of praise than a decent foundation, in the words of Cui Chan's grandfather. In any case, you're still the best, master, Pei Qian said as she raised her head with a vibrant smile. Meanwhile, Sui Yubian and the others were struggling immensely at the hands of Zheng Dafeng, and this was even after he had restricted his own cultivation base to the far-roaming tier. Otherwise, if he were to go all out, then a light spar would turn into a one-sided beating. Unlike for chi refiners, a difference of a single tier for martial artists was akin to the difference between night and day. Of course, there were also exceptions to this. For example, Cui Chan's grandfather, the only pure martial artist on Eastern Treasured Vile Continent at the pinnacle of the 10th tier, had managed to easily kill that 6th-tier martial artist who had come to request his mentorship with a 5th-tier punch. However, even if that wasn't a one-off case, it wasn't far from it. Chen Ping'an couldn't help but think of the white-robed young boy, Chao Ci. Now that they were both at the 5th tier, Chen Ping'an really wanted to know if he would still suffer 3 consecutive crushing defeats if he were to face Chao Ci in battle again. Chen Ping'an cast aside those errant thoughts as he focused his attention on the battle taking place in the courtyard, and he said to Pei Qian, I forgot to apologize to you for what happened as we were passing through that prefectural city prior to entering the Clear Realm mountain area. Pei Qian was munching on some sunflower seeds as she looked up at him with a perplexed expression and asked, Why are you apologizing to me? Is it because of that pancake? At the time, Pei Qian and Wei Xian had gone out to buy some food to eat, while Chen Ping'an and the others were visiting a bookshop. Upon reuniting with Pei Qian, Chen Ping'an discovered her munching on a pancake, while a woman dressed in lavish clothing was hurling a torrent of abuse at her. Standing beside the woman was a sniveling child, and the woman wasn't being excessively vulgar with her words, most likely because she was from a highly educated family. All she was saying was that Pei Qian was an uncivilized little brat, and that her parents ought to teach her a lesson for her rudeness. Chen Ping'an's immediate assumption was that Pei Qian had caused some trouble again, and he strode over to her with a stern expression. He was very worried that not only would Pei Qian not grow up under the positive influence of the books that he was making her read, she would become a rude and domineering little brat under the influence of Zhu Lian and the others instead. Hence, he had sided with the woman and the child, and even though he hadn't directly scolded her, it was very clear what stance he was taking on the matter. Pei Qian was extremely fearful of Chen Ping'an, and she immediately offered the rest of her pancake to the woman, telling her that she didn't want it, and that the child could have it. The woman was even more infuriated upon hearing this, feeling as if she had been humiliated. She mistook Chen Ping'an for a senior of Pei Qian's, and she began scolding her as well. However, she was much more reserved and careful with her words, most likely because Chen Ping'an's attire gave her the false impression that he was from a very wealthy clan. Only after hearing Wei Xian's recount the sequence of events leading up to that point did Chen Ping'an realize that he had made a mistake. As it turned out, Pei Qian had bought the last pancake in the shop, but she was approached by the child, who really wanted the pancake and asked her to give it to him. Pei Qian naturally refused to oblige, and not only that, she began eating the pancake in front of the child while intentionally raving about how delicious it was. The child immediately burst into tears, And that was when the woman swooped in. However, Pei Qian was completely unbothered by her scathing words, continuing to happily munch on her pancake. The more irate the woman became, the more gleeful Pei Qian felt. All the while, Wei Xian acted as a passive bystander, seeing no need to intervene as long as the woman did not resort to physical violence. After learning the truth, Qian Ping'an led Pei Qian over to the woman and asked her to apologize. The woman was furious, and she declared that she had the connections required to ensure that Qian Ping'an wouldn't be able to make it out of the city alive. Qian Ping'an told her to do as she pleased, and after a few more parting threats, the woman stormed away in a huff with her child. After that, nothing happened. Qian Ping'an waited for a while for the woman to come back with her so-called reinforcements, but they never showed up, so in the end, he could only leave the prefectural city with Pei Qian and the others. Qian Ping'an patted on Pei Qian's head as he sighed. "I owe you an apology for what happened back then." Pei Qian was very perplexed to hear this, and she hurriedly threw down her handful of sunflower seeds, then got up from her little stool before sitting down beside Qian Ping'an on the bench as she said in an uneasy manner, "Old man Wei tells me that prisoners on death row are always granted a fine feast before they're executed. You don't intend to abandon me here, do you, father? Is that why you're saying all of this?" The thought of abandonment had Pei Qian feeling so fearful that she had even forgotten not to refer to Qian Ping'an as her father, and she was gripping tightly onto his sleeve with all her might. Qian Ping'an gave her a flick on the forehead, and the panic and fear in her eyes instantly turned to elation. Even though her forehead was stinging, she knew that she was safe. Pei Qian released Qian Ping'an's sleeve, then set her hands down onto the bench as she swung her feet back and forth and said, "There's no need for you to apologize to me about something so trivial, master. You scared me witless just now. In the words of Old Man Wei, this is so minor and insignificant that it's like a light drizzle of rain, which isn't even enough to wash one's hair." Qian Ping'an also planted his palms down onto the bench as he smiled and asked, "Do you still remember what happened when we reached the summit of the Heavenly Palace Peak? You must have felt like I was acting very strangely, right?" Pei Qian nodded vigorously in response. "I remember it very clearly. At the time you did something very strange. You stood up really straight, then adjusted the jade hairpin in your hair. In the books I read, it says that this is the correct etiquette to be observed when meeting with important guests, but you didn't even know those people from Green Goat Palace, and they weren't figures of high status either, so I couldn't help but wonder why you did that. I thought about this for a very long time, but couldn't come up with an answer, so I just gave up." An absent-minded look appeared on Qian Ping'an's face as he cast his gaze into the distance and said, "Some years ago, I encountered some immortals from the outside for the very first time at the entrance of my hometown. They varied quite drastically in age, and at the time I was standing beside Zheng Dafeng, looking out at them through the wooden gate. I've always had good eyesight and memory, so even to this day, I can still clearly recall their demeanors and the looks on their faces when they looked at me." Qian Ping'an paused here for a long while, then smiled as he continued, "That's why I've always thought to myself that if I'm ever in their position someday, then I can't allow myself to look at the others the same way they looked at me. I can't be so high and mighty and become accustomed to seeing other people as ants." This was perhaps the first time that Qian Ping'an had spoken so seriously to Pei Qian about principles that couldn't be found in books, life principles that belonged to Qian Ping'an alone. Qian Ping'an crouched down to pick up the sunflower seeds that Pei Qian had dropped in her panic, and he gathered the sunflower seeds in the palm of his other hand before sitting back down again. He then offered one of the sunflower seeds to Pei Qian as he said in a seemingly casual manner, "The way that we sit, the way that we speak, the way that we act, the principles that we abide by, all of those things tell the world about how many books you've read, how much hardships you've endured, how much of the teachings from senior figures in your life that you've absorbed. Hence, I don't want others to see and think badly of my parents and the teachers that I respect. I don't want to present myself in a way that would portray my seniors and mentors in a bad light." Qian Ping'an turned to Pei Qian with a smile as he continued, "You're still young, so it doesn't matter if you don't understand what I'm talking about now. Back when I was your age." Qian Ping'an's voice trailed off here, and he didn't want to follow that train of thought any further. He set all of the sunflower seeds down onto Pei Qian's hand, then said, "Mr. Qi's teacher is right. A young child should be vibrant and exuberant. I'm already past that age, so I can't display those qualities anymore, but I hope that you can." Little Baoping over at Mountain Cliff Academy, and Chao Qinglang of the Lotus Flower Blessed Land are both able to do this. Both of them are unburdened by worries and scars, and they carry nothing but hopes and aspirations and on their shoulders. Just the thought of their exuberance puts me in a very good mood. You're such a good person, Father, Pei Qian sighed. If I'm ever out in the world on my own, how am I ever going to find someone as good as you? A hint of concern then appeared in her eyes as she continued. Back when I was stuck on the ship, I could only look out at the ferry stations and think to myself about how fun everything looks out there. I thought to myself that when I grow up someday and master unrivaled swordsmanship, I'd say to you, Father, give me a horse, I'm going out to explore the world. However, I then thought to myself that horses are quite expensive, so you may not be willing to give me one. In that case, I would settle for a donkey or even a mule. The big wide world is waiting for me, and it's begging me to come and explore it. Pei Qian heaved a forlorn sigh here, then continued. But now, I don't want to go exploring the world anymore. What's the point? It's all bad people or not so good people out there. Chan Ping'an also began swinging his feet back and forth as he smiled and asked. But you also met me while you were out in the big wide world, didn't you? Pei Qian was silent for a long while upon hearing this, and after some extensive deep thought, she replied in a quiet voice. But I don't want to meet anyone else now that I've met you. The dust medicinal shop had returned to its former lively and bustling state. After an hour of sparring, Zhang Dafeng allowed Wei Xian and the others some time to rest. After that, the sparring sessions continued in a periodic fashion, and Zhang Dafeng kept his own cultivation base restricted to the 8th tier the entire time, but was slowly elevating it over time, from the earliest initial far-roaming tier gradually to the peak far-roaming tier. The teamwork displayed by Wei Xian and the others was becoming more and more exemplary over time, thereby placing more and more pressure on Zhang Dafeng. This entire time, the four of them hadn't come together to speak even once. Even during the breaks that they were afforded, all of them stood apart from one another, silently absorbed in their own thoughts. After having dinner and completing her transcriptions for the day, Pei Qian picked up her hiking pole, then began practicing her self-invented deranged demon sword techniques in the courtyard. After that, she went back to her room to sleep, feeling very satisfied with herself. Before going to bed, she called out to Chan Ping'an to let him know that she was retiring for the night, then opened the green bamboo bookcase that Chan Ping'an had placed in her room. From there, she brought out the treasure box gifted to her by Yao Jinji and began going through the things inside. While the treasure pagoda demon-suppressing talisman that now truly belonged to her was plastered to her head. Right as she was bobbing her head from side to side with a gleeful expression, a hint of melancholy suddenly appeared on her face. She knew that if she were to sell this talisman, then she would be able to afford a big house, but at the same time, she couldn't bear to part with the talisman. However, she quickly brushed off those worries. At the moment, she wasn't wanting for food or shelter, so it didn't make much of a difference whether she had a house or not. Having said that, she had already made up her mind that she was definitely going to buy a house in the future that was at least as big as Green Roving Residence. On top of that, she had to have a strange spirit wall, as well to ensure that all of her visitors immediately realized just how wealthy she was. That same night, the Een soul with the Zhao surname returned with a series of geomancy maps. No one knew where he had sourced these maps from, but it hardly mattered. The maps were placed on the table in the main hall in an orderly fashion, and under the light of the lamp, Lu Baixiang asked Zhang Dafeng for a thin-tipped brush, then began making markings and annotations on the maps as if he were a general directing an army. Wei Xian was also present, but Julien and Sui Yubian remained uninvolved. The former was reading a book outside under the moonlight, while the latter was standing out in the yard, refining the true qi in her acupoints. As for Zhang Dafeng, he had already gone to sleep, and his snores were like thunder. It was agreed that the sparring sessions would resume in 4 hours. These sparring sessions could hone and further elevate the cultivation bases of Wei Xian and the others, while also ensuring that they would be able to absorb the Green Goat Palace pills that they had taken as quickly as possible, so overall, it was a very good deal for Chan Ping'an. Chan Ping'an remained standing by the table the entire time, watching Lu Baixiang, Wei Xian, and the Een god make annotations on the geomancy maps. He didn't have to contribute much, only having to make decisions when the 3 people doing the actual work were unable to reach a consensus, so it was a very easy job. The journey that Chan Ping'an had taken down the long river of time in the Lotus Flower Blessed Land was a very extensive one. In other words, it had allowed him to experience the passage of a lengthy period of time. Even so, Qian Ping'an only dared to say that he knew a little about the ways of the world. When it came to things like strategic planning, Qian Ping'an refrained from voicing his opinions as much as possible, mostly leaving it to the experts. Wei Xian was a seasoned veteran who had spent almost his entire life on the battlefield, while Lu Baixiang was an exceptionally talented jack of all trades. Not only was he an expert in strategy and tactics, he was also extremely well-versed in the teachings of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism of the Lotus Flower-blessed land. As the founding father of a demonic orthodoxy, perhaps the only flaw that he had was that he had only just arrived in Majestic World and still hadn't reached the summit of this world yet. The higher one made their way up the mountain, the fewer and fewer people they'd encounter. If they were to take the wrong route and reach the end of a path that led to nowhere, then all they would be able to do was watch as others continued to scale up the mountain and pass them by. Hence, Qian Ping'an was able to understand Sui Yubian's fury when she discovered that her potential ceiling had been lowered from the martial god tier to the 9th tier. Of course, that didn't mean he approved of her tantrum. Zheng Dafeng made it seem like it wasn't a big deal that he was a 9th tier martial artist, but that shouldn't be a reason for anyone to think that 9th tier martial artists were as cheap and common as cabbage sold in street-side stalls. Zheng Dafeng was a direct disciple of Old Man Yang and the gatekeeper of Jewel's small world, yet he had still almost been driven to the point of qi deviation while making his breakthrough to the 9th tier. Sui Yubian was extremely fortunate to have been able to make a breakthrough to the Vajrabadi tier following the battle at the rundown temple, yet she still only had eyes for the scenery at the very peak. Her excessive ambition and constant dissatisfaction with what she already had went against the age-old principle for pure martial artists of taking one solid step at a time. Qian Ping'an didn't think that the principles that he espoused would truly be able to get through to Sui Yubian, but that didn't matter to him. Deep infatuation belonged to him, as did the pills from Green Goat Palace, so he had the right to decide whether to give those things to her, and if so, when. No one owed her anything, and she'd do well to understand that. Under the light of the lamp, a main path had already been narrowed down on the geomancy maps, and there were fewer and fewer arguments taking place, so Qian Ping'an took this as an opportunity to go outside from some fresh air. After making his way out into the yard, he sat down on the bench across from the main hall. The layout of the Dust medicinal shop was very similar to that of the Yang family's medicinal shop. Whenever Qian Ping'an saw the long bench, he would think of the storyteller who had once visited Old Man Yang. At the time, the old storyteller had sat at roughly the same spot. When it came to the injustices of the world, everyone saw things through different lenses. If the likes of Gao Shizhen and Lu Tsong had been in Qian Ping'an's place, they wouldn't feel as if they were witnessing an injustice at all, and all they would do would be to passively observe. Perhaps they would even find an opportunity to step in and see if they could take advantage of the situation for their own benefit. If Zhang Shangzhen had been in Qian Ping'an's place, he most likely wouldn't even regard this as something that was worthy of his attention, and that allowing himself to be distracted by something would only be of detriment to his cultivation. Even though Qian Ping'an was forced to expend many treasures during the battle at the rundown temple, thereby incurring a massive loss, he didn't harbor much resentment over the incident. Of course, that didn't mean that he would hold back against his assailants, particularly when his life was on the line. However, even now Zhang Shangzhen perhaps still couldn't understand why Qian Ping'an intended to kill Zhou Shi and Yue back in the Lotus Flower-blessed land. And even Zheng Dafeng most likely didn't understand why Qian Ping'an insisted on getting involved in the mess in Old Dragon City. The reasons for Qian Ping'an's actions were actually very simple. If this had been a fair and open conflict, with both sides going at each other in a straightforward fashion without hatching any sinister plots, then Qian Ping'an would be able to accept the outcome, no matter who lived and who died. However, Chao Qinglong's parents were completely innocent, yet they had been slain in cold blood by Zhou Shi and Yue, and the same applied to the girl who had died at the hands of the young man from the Feng clan. Regardless of how Ding Ying and the Feng clan tried to justify their actions and make it seem was nothing more than insignificant collateral damage, it was impossible to convince Qian Ping'an that these three innocent souls deserved the terrible fates that they had suffered. While drinking with Li Er, Qi Jingchun said that a true hero is one who possesses the courage to challenge those stronger than them. Of course, Qian Ping'an was unaware of this. But what he did know was that prior to Aoyang's ascension, He had declared that the freedom of a powerful individual draws its boundary at the freedom of a weak individual. Life was filled with unpredictable twists and turns, and there were no two identical leaves in the world, but some principles were interconnected. Back at the Flying Eagle Fortress, Lu Tai had said to the poor woman who had birthed the ghost infant, "The world is very uninteresting, you shouldn't have come." After pondering these words for some time, Chen Ping'an decided that it was not the world that was uninteresting. Instead, the problem was that there were too many unreasonable people in the world. Whenever kind and good people have their interests harmed by others, all they can do is console themselves by saying they had learned a valuable lesson. In contrast, evildoers are often able to get away with their heinous actions, and it seems that the karma often touted simply doesn't exist. While Chen Ping'an was seated on the bench outside, some of the finer details were still being discussed in the room. The Yin soul with the Zhao surname was familiar with all of the powers that be in Old Dragon City, so Wei Xian and Lu Baixiang had formed one camp, while the Yin soul's role was to oppose them. The Yin soul placed himself in the shoes of the Fu clan, employing different methods to target the dust medicinal shop, while Wei Xian and Lu Baixiang were responsible for coming up with counter-strategies. All the while, Julien was sitting under the eaves, reading through one of his cherished romance novels. It was a new book that he had only purchased recently, yet he had already read through it so many times that it looked like well-used volume in a public library. At this moment, he was muttering to himself about how the book was exceptional value for money. As it turned out, the book itself wasn't all that great, but on its final page was a list of other titles of the same genre, and next to each title was a brief 2 to 3 sentence appraisal from the author. As Julien closed the book, he couldn't help but sigh to himself, "What a great man! I pray that the heavens smile down upon him." He then turned to Chen Ping'an with a sheepish smile as he said, "My apologies, young master. I'll try to exercise more restraint from now on." Chen Ping'an smiled as he waved a dismissive hand, then reminded Julien, "Make sure to keep that a secret." A guilt-ridden look appeared on Julien's face as he replied, "My inability to offer you any assistance has been constantly weighing on my conscience these past few days, so I'm certainly not going to tell anyone about that." Chen Ping'an offered no response. Back on Green Goat Palace Luchuan, Chen Ping'an was considering sending a letter to the Stork Inn on Stalactite Mountain. From there, he would request the shopkeeper to give the letter to the sword-hugging middle-aged man to see if he could pass the letter on to Ning Yao. However, whenever he tried to push brush to paper, he found himself at a complete loss for what to write. In the end, he had no choice but to turn to Julien for assistance. He had thought that Julien was simply a misunderstood romantic with rather interesting tastes in the literature that he liked to consume, but to his dismay, he discovered that Sui Yubian's appraisal of Julien was perfectly accurate. He was nothing more than an old pervert. The suggestions that he provided either raised goosebumps all over Chen Ping'an's body, or had him sweating profusely, so he naturally didn't dare to put those suggestions to use. Inside the courtyard, Sui Yubian drew her sword before flicking its blade with her finger, while listening to the ringing sound that the sword made. In an extremely rare display, a hint of a smile appeared on her face. Chen Ping'an smiled as he said, "There you go, Sui Yubian. Isn't it good to smile every once in a while? Why the long face all the time? If the opportunity arises in the future, I'll introduce some sword immortals to you." Sui Yubian sheathed her sword, then turned to Chen Ping'an with a cold sneer as she scoffed. "Showing your true colors already, huh? Would you like me to warm your bed for you tonight?" Chen Ping'an chuckled. "Nope, I don't dare." Julien smiled as he said, "What a true gentleman you are, young master. I bet countless men would have been scrambling over one another to accept that offer from her just now." A sense of foreboding instantly welled up in Chen Ping'an's heart upon hearing Julien's terrible attempt at flattery, and sure enough, a look of cold killing intent immediately appeared on Sui Yubian's face, and she was most likely deciding between which one of the two she wanted to cut down first. Chen Ping'an and Julien immediately fled the scene, with the former rushing into the medicinal shop, while the latter scurried back into his room. Sui Yubian gave a cold harumph before also returning to her room. At this point, Pei Qian was already sound asleep. Having been alone for most of her life with no one to look after her, Pei Qian had constantly been sleeping either on the ground or on top of the stone lions outside the manors of wealthy clans, so her sleeping posture was horrendous, and her arms and legs were all over the place, letting out all of the warm air under her blankets. Sui Yubian's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and she quietly strode over to the bed, then gently tucked Pei Qian's arms and legs back under her blankets. After that, she lit the lamp on the table in the room before sitting down in silence with only her sword for company. Qian Ping'an was sleeping on the ground in the medicinal shop, but he was really only half asleep throughout the night. Zhang Dafeng continued to periodically spar with Wei Xian and the others in the courtyard, and Qian Ping'an's eyes were closed as he listened to the sound of Zhang Dafeng's fist intent, which reverberated deep within his heart. An uneventful night passed by. With the imminent battle fast approaching, the Fu clan wasn't so shameless that it would send people to harass Zhang Dafeng, even if there was someone with sufficient power to force their way into the shop. At the moment, the dignity of the Fu clan virtually equated to the dignity of the Cloud Forest Zhang clan, so the Fu clan naturally wasn't going to do anything to disgrace itself. Otherwise, Fu Qi wouldn't have personally issued that challenge to Zhang Dafeng. At the moment, the main topic being discussed in the room was exactly how many celestial tools Fu Qi was able to wield. It was already extremely strange that members of the Fu clan were able to wield pseudo-celestial tools starting from only the golden core tier when such weapons were notoriously difficult to use and prone to causing backlash. However, over time the outside world simply grew accustomed to this and no longer questioned it. Qian Ping'an woke up very early in the morning. Zhang Dafeng was eating a bowl of congee while squatting at the entrance of the main hall, while Pei Qian was also squatting next to him, saying something to him in hushed tones. It seemed that they were getting along very well. Lu Baixiang was playing his guqin inside his room, producing beautiful music that evoked imagery of tall mountains and flowing waterfalls. Wei Xian was practicing the six-step walking meditation that he had secretly learned from Qian Ping'an, and Sui Yubian was also practicing Qian Ping'an's standing meditation. Zhu Lian was much kinder to Qian Ping'an than the rest. He brought a large bowl of congee, which he claimed to have cooked himself. Qian Ping'an sat down on the long bench and drank the congee as the sky continued to brighten, feeling reinvigorated and refreshed. After that, he made his way to the front of the dust medicinal shop and opened its doors. As for whether there were any customers this early in the morning, as it turned out, there actually were. After opening the door, Qian Ping'an began practicing his walking meditation, going to the entrance of the alley before doubling back, and on the third repetition, two figures made their way into his line of sight. One of them was a familiar figure that Qian Ping'an wasn't surprised to see, but he was accompanied by a not-so-familiar figure that Qian Ping'an definitely wasn't expecting to see. The familiar figure was Fan Air, and he was accompanied by a green-robed young woman. Back in the underground Dragon Channel, the ships that she and Qian Ping'an had been on had passed by each other, granting them a fleeting glimpse of each other, and she had teased him for trying to drink wine out of his sword-nurturing gourd. Upon spotting Qian Ping'an from afar, Fan Air yelled, "Qian Ping'an, do you dare to fight me now that I'm at the 4th tier?" "Nope," Qian Ping'an replied with a shake of his head. "You and I are both 4th tier masters now. If we do not have a battle for the ages, that would be a travesty for the entire world." Fan Air began to yell menacingly as he began flailing his fists around in an erratic fashion while charging straight at Qian Ping'an, who slapped a hand to his own forehead in exasperation, but could only play along, slowly advancing using his walking meditation technique to engage Fan Air in this battle for the ages. Thankfully, Fan Air had only taken a few steps when he was grabbed by the collar by Fan Junmao before being tossed behind her as she scolded, "Don't make a fool out of yourself here. If you want to fool around, then go to the dragon scaling platform." Fan Air walked along obediently behind her while making faces at Qian Ping'an. Qian Ping'an stopped in his tracks as he asked, "Are you Fan Air's sister Fan Junmao?" Fan Junmao also had a wine gourd strapped to her waist, and she continued walking forward as she replied with a cold sneer, "I'd rather not have a brother like him, but I can't stop my father from being intimate with this boy's mother." Fan Air was still grinning from ear to ear, completely unbothered to hear this. It occurred to Qian Ping'an that only with a personality could Fan Junmao truly command respect from someone like Fan Air. If she were your average elegant and quiet young mistress, then Fan Air would undoubtedly still be fond of her, but he wouldn't respect and admire her from the bottom of his heart. Fan Junmao had no intention of walking into the medicinal shop, and she pointed a finger inside as she commanded, "Go and stay in there, Fan Air." Fan Air gave an affirmative response, then rushed into the medicinal shop, and as he passed by Qian Ping'an, He sighed in a lamenting voice, I pray for your safety. All of a sudden, a flash of recognition appeared in Qian Ping'an's eyes, and he exclaimed, Young Mistress Fan, were you the one who? Before he had a chance to finish, Fan Junmao nodded in confirmation and cut him off as she confirmed, That's right, that was me that you saw back then. The last time we met, you were traveling southward, while I was traveling northward to your hometown in Jewel Small World to meet Old Man Yang. He doesn't care much for Zheng Dafeng, and sent him to Old Dragon City to fend for himself. In contrast, he made special mention of you, telling me that I could come and take a look at you if I was interested. Regarding Old Man Yang's attitude toward Zheng Dafeng, that was something the latter had already revealed to Qian Ping'an the previous night. Zheng Dafeng explicitly told him that Old Man Yang had warned him not to tell anyone that he was his disciple. Even if he died, he was to take that secret with him to the grave. That was why Fu Nanhua was under the impression that Zheng Dafeng was nothing more than the gatekeeper of Jewel's small world.
Traumehr, Faner, Fanjamaoyeld.
And make sure it's a chair, not a stool. Fan Air gave an affirmative response from inside the shop, then really did carry a chair to the entrance of the shop before tossing it to her. Fan Junmao caught the chair, then set it down next to the wall across from the medicinal shop. She leaned back onto the two rear legs of the chair, swaying back and forth as she said in a lazy manner, Zheng Dafeng is most likely unaware that Fu Qi was completely oblivious to Fu Donghai's plan. Fu Donghai is nothing more than a useless idiot whose ambitions far outweigh his abilities. Unlike him, Fu Qi is aware of some of the secrets of Jewel's small world, so he's determined to try and win over Zheng Dafeng. He had even personally paid a visit to Zheng Dafeng in the past, accompanied by a woman with long legs. I think her name was Fu Chunhua. Unfortunately, Zheng Dafeng turned down his offer back then. Even so, Fu Qi still didn't want to get on Zheng Dafeng's bad side, so his intention was just to leave Zheng Dafeng alone. However, Fu Donghai had to cook up that little plot of his, thinking that he had outsmarted everyone, and to further compound Fu Qi's woes, that old maidservant from the Cloud Forest Zhang clan got swept up in the matter as well when she swooped in to save Fu Donghai. As a result, what could have been a conflict that Fu Qi could settle behind closed doors became an all-important matter that concerned the dignity of the Zhang clan. Hence, he had no choice but to challenge Zheng Dafeng to a battle to the death on the dragon scaling platform. Otherwise, he would essentially be slapping the Zhang clan in the face right after the marriage alliance between the two clans was established. What would you do in that situation if you were the patriarch of the Cloud Forest Zhang clan? My descendants must learn to fend for themselves sooner or later, Qian Ping'an replied. One cannot go against facts and principles just because they feel offended. Fan Junmao was stunned into silence by the naivety of this answer, and she removed her wine gourd from her waist as she exclaimed, Thank heavens I didn't drink any wine just now. Otherwise, I would have surely choked to death. Oh? Does that mean that you're not a fan of the way that our Fan clan conducts our business? Fan Junmao asked with a faint smile as she took a sip of wine. Qian Ping'an smiled as he replied, The fact that the Fan clan was able to nurture a future heir like Fan Heir clearly tells me that it's a clan with good traditions and values. However, there are too many authoritative figures in the Fan clan's ancestral hall, and as the saying goes, too many cooks spoil the broth. As the clan leader, Fan Heir's father has to take everyone into account, so it's very difficult for him to do the right thing. In fact, I'm willing to bet that there are many occasions where he's forced to do the wrong thing, despite knowing that it's wrong. I'm not so foolish and naive that I can't understand something so basic, and in my opinion, the Fan clan has severely mishandled this matter regarding Zheng Dafeng. If I were to ever do business with the Fan clan, I would only do so if Fan Heir is the one personally overseeing proceedings. In contrast, if I were doing business with the Sun clan, then I would feel more reassured if Sun Jiashu remained uninvolved. Fan Junmao cocked her head to the side as she mused, You're not so stupid after all. Why is it that Old Man Yang likes to say that you're not very bright? Qian Ping'an couldn't help but burst into laughter upon hearing this. It's been many years since I left home. Surely you can't expect me to have only grown in height and not intelligence. You've definitely become a little more intelligent, but you're still not very smart when it comes to important matters, Fan Junmao mused. Qian Ping'an remained unfazed, cutting straight to the chase as he asked, Can we get down to business now? Just by looking at the list, I could already tell that your bonded item refinement is definitely going to fail, Fan Junmao scoffed. Not only are you a complete novice at this, your ambitions are even loftier than the heavens. If I'm not mistaken, the water attribute bonded item that you're refining is an item of a very high caliber, right? And the item refinement mantra and the cauldron you're using are also quite exceptional, right? Not only are you setting yourself up for failure, are you aware that failure will result in long-lasting negative consequences that will affect you for the rest of your cultivation journey? A grim look appeared on Chen Ping'an's face upon hearing this. Fan Junmao smiled as she continued, I know you're not the type of person to be swayed once you've made up your mind on something. This is just business, so I couldn't care less whether you succeed or fail with the things that you've purchased from our clan. Rest assured, I've already brought everything on your list with me. However, in exchange, I want the golden core of that nascent tier flood dragon from the flood dragon trench. I must admit that such a priceless treasure is quite alluring, even for someone like me. Otherwise, I would have sent Fan Air to see you on his own instead of coming here myself. Fan Junmao took a large swig of wine, then continued. If you're thinking that this is daylight robbery, then yes, you're right. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm aware that I'm asking for far too much, but under these circumstances, can you afford to turn me down? Chen Ping'an offered no response, merely tossing out the porcelain container that contained the old flood dragon's golden core for Fan Junmao to catch. I heard from Zheng Dafeng that you can control the sea of clouds above Old Dragon City. If I can bring out something even better than that golden core, would you be willing to intervene and ensure Zheng Dafeng's survival, regardless of the outcome of the battle on the dragon scaling platform? Chen Ping'an asked. Fan Air has a minimization treasure that I gave him, and he's most likely already pulling out the things that you requested as we speak. As a member of the Fan clan, I value integrity greatly when it comes to business, so you can rest assured that everything is high quality. The only real downside is that it's a little expensive, but even if you go to the Fu clan, they'll only be able to provide you things of a similar quality. As for whether I can save Zheng Dafeng, even if I break the rules and choose to intervene, there's only a 50% chance that I can save his worthless life, and I really don't want to do that in the slightest, Fan Junmao replied with a smile as she gently tossed the porcelain container in her hand up and down. Chen Ping'an was just about to speak when Zheng Dafeng stepped out of the shop, then sat down onto the doorstep, and it appeared as if he and Chen Ping'an were serving as the door gods of the dust medicinal shop. He smiled as he said, begging her isn't going to amount to anything. Fan Junmao nodded in agreement, and the porcelain container vanished with a flick of her wrist as she confirmed, he's right. Chen Ping'an opened his mouth to speak again, but this time Zheng Dafeng shook his head at him with a stern expression, warning him not to bring out the golden core of the 12th tier great demon. Fan Junmao's eyes immediately lit up upon seeing this, and she asked, do you actually have something more precious than this golden core? Show me. If I deem it to be worth the trouble, then perhaps I really will get involved. After all, getting some exercise every once in a while isn't a bad thing. That's enough. Zheng Dafeng snapped as he rose to his feet. Fan Junmao, is there really no chance that Chen Ping'an could successfully refine his bonded item? It was clear that he was forcibly changing subjects to curtail Fan Junmao's curiosity. Fan Junmao was a little deflated upon hearing this, and she leaned back against her chair while swirling around the wine gourd in her hand as she scoffed. Do you really think that refining a bonded item is something that any cultivator of the lower 5 tiers could pull off any time that they please? Do you know what environmental, timing, and human conditions are required to accomplish such a feat? Is he hoping that he's blessed by the heavens and could successfully refine a bonded item on his first try without any experience, knowledge, or preparation? Chen Ping'an, if you can pull this off, I'll gouge out my own eyeballs and give them to you as a present. Zheng Dafeng turned to Chen Ping'an and said in a solemn manner, don't do it, Chen Ping'an. You hear me? Seeing Zheng Dafeng so serious was an extremely rare occurrence. Chen Ping'an could only nod in response. In that case, I'll pass for now. I know how terrible my luck is. Fan Junmao rose to her feet as she said, all right, that's about all that I have to say. Fight well, Zheng Dafeng. I'll be watching overhead, so make sure to die a heroic death to impress me. Zheng Dafeng immediately reverted back to his usual self, rubbing his hands together with a perverted smile as he asked, what color dress will you be wearing on the sea of clouds on the day, young Mistress Fan? This green dress of yours is spectacular, but you should change things up every once in a while. Fan Junmao was completely unfazed by Zheng Dafeng's flippant remarks, and she smiled as she replied, "On the day, I'll stand on the dragon scaling platform completely naked. You'll be too distracted looking at me, and Fu Qi will stab you to death with his sword, then stomp your head into mush. Your eyeballs will pop out of their sockets and fly up from the dragon scaling platform into the sea of clouds, where I'll catch them and crush them with my hands. Can't you ever have something good to say about me, young Mistress Fan?" Zheng Dafeng sighed in a sullen manner. Fan Junmao burst into laughter as she departed from the alley. Only after he was certain that Fan Junmao was far away did Zheng Dafeng turn to Qian Pingyan with a stern expression, then said, "Do not bring out that demon core in front of anyone unless you absolutely have no other choice, regardless of whether it's Fu Qi or anyone from the Cloud Forest Zhang clan. Even an immortal tier cultivator could be susceptible to the allure of such a priceless treasure. That thing could save your life in the future. But if you give it to Fan Junmao, you won't get anything in return. So what if she intervenes? There's only a 50% chance that she'll be able to save me, and even then it's not like that'll be the end of our troubles. Even if I'm saved, how are you and the others going to leave Old Dragon City? I never wanted to be your Dao mentor," Qian Pingyan suddenly said with a smile. Zheng Dafeng rolled his eyes and sat back down onto the doorstep as he scoffed. "You think I want you as a Dao mentor? How am I ever supposed to look Li Er in the eye now?" Qian Pingyan tucked his hands up his sleeves as he cast his gaze toward the wall up ahead, then continued, "However, I'm very happy to serve as your Dao guardian right now." All of a sudden Fan Junmao reappeared on the chair with a gleeful expression as she exclaimed, "It sounds like you have an even more incredible demon core. Is it the beast core of an 11th tier great demon? No, it has to be a 12th tier one. It must be the golden core of that great demon that wreaked havoc in Parasol Leaf Continent's planchette writing sect. How did you get your hands on that thing?" Zheng Dafeng's expression changed drastically as he stared intently at Fan Junmao and warned, "Don't even think about that beast core. I'm serious, Fan Junmao." Fan Junmao extended a finger forward before twirling it around in a circle in the air, and wisps of mist seeped out of the wall behind her before converging to form a tiny cloud in front of her fingertip. If she hadn't prepared this in advance, she wouldn't have been able to hear these words that had come from the bottom of Zheng Dafeng's heart. It was an extremely rare display for Zheng Dafeng to be so earnest with anyone, and she couldn't help but turn to Qian Pingyan with renewed intrigue in her eyes. She took a sip of wine, then said with a smug expression, "The golden core of a 12th tier great demon can be refined in 3 different ways, namely advanced refinement, standard refinement, and basic refinement. Advanced refinement is no less difficult than refining a bonded item, so I suggest you don't even consider it. Instead, you should give it to me, and I'll make sure to keep the sea of clouds above your heads in check." The Fu clan is essentially nothing more than a caretaker that can use the sea of clouds a little when I'm away. However, now that I'm here, I can ensure that the sea of clouds is completely inaccessible to them. A look of longing appeared in her eyes as she continued, "If you give me that demon core, I'll be able to devour the water fortune of the sea on all 3 sides of Old Dragon City. All I'll need to do is pick a good date, and I'll have all of the environmental, timing, and human conditions required. How about it? If you give me the demon core, I can ensure a 50% chance that Zheng Dafeng will survive. He's going to lose this worthless life of his anyway, so I can save him once and it won't matter much. What about standard refinement and basic refinement?" Qian Pingyan asked with a smile. Fan Junmao raised an eyebrow as she replied, "Basic refinement is quite simple, just soak the demon core in wine for a while, then drink it. As for the effects, you'll know once you drink the wine." Qian Pingyan nodded in response. "I see. In that case, I'll take the standard refinement route. Thank you for telling me all of this, young Mistress Fan." Fan Junmao rose to her feet with an unfriendly expression. Zheng Dafeng hurriedly rose to his feet as well, and he warned in a confrontational voice, "Fan Junmao, don't forget that I have a Yin soul here. If you dare to do anything to Qian Pingyan, I'll make it so that your cultivation base stagnates for at least a century." Fan Junmao began pacing back and forth through the alley in front of the dust medicinal shop while glowering intently at Qian Pingyan, and in the end, she stomped a foot down onto the ground, launching herself up into the air and into the sea of clouds. She was feeling extremely agitated, and she began yelling in frustration as she swung her sleeves through the air, sending clouds crashing violently into one another. After venting her fury for a while, she laid down onto the sea of clouds and murmured to herself, "If I can use that thing to brew wine for basic refinement, I won't have to worry about anything for the rest of my life." She wiped the drool that was trickling down from the corner of her lips, as she began rolling around on the sea of clouds in frustration. Inside the alley, Zhang Dafeng wiped the sweat from his forehead, then turned to the calm and collected Chen Ping'an as he praised, "You've got guts, I'll give you that." Chen Ping'an's expression remained unchanged as he said, "Take a look at my back." Zhang Dafeng really did step over the doorstep to take a look, and sure enough, Chen Ping'an's back was drenched in sweat. Zhang Dafeng sat back down onto the doorstep with a grin on his face as he sighed. "Never did I think that the annoying little boy from back then would grow up to become who you are now. I never anticipated this myself," Chen Ping'an said as he removed the sword-nurturing gourd from his waist and took some small sips of wine out of it. After a brief silence, Chen Ping'an turned to Zhang Dafeng with a smile as he asked, "Have I changed for the better or for worse?" Zhang Dafeng considered the question momentarily, then replied, "I think it's a positive change." He then slapped himself across the face as he grumbled, "I've only been staying with Pei Qian and Zhu Lian for one day, yet I've already learned to suck up to you from them." Zhang Dafeng was still grumbling to himself as he rose to his feet and entered the backyard of the medicinal shop, where he called out to Wei Xian and the others to continue their sparring. This time, all four of them could sense immense pressure from Zhang Dafeng, and it felt more like he was going to use them as punching bags to vent as opposed to sparring with them for training purposes. "Your stuff's all inside," Feng said as he ran out of the shop before sitting down beside Chen Ping'an with a wide smile on his face. Chen Ping'an nodded as he replied, "I don't think I'll refine a bonded item for now, but I do want to refine something else. Go back before anyone sees you. If you stay here for too long, you could attract trouble for your clan." "All right, I'll find another time to come visit you then," Feng said, then departed without any hesitation. Chen Ping'an rose to his feet and accompanied Feng to the entrance of the alley, where there was a horse-drawn carriage waiting for him, and the coach driver was the golden courtier swordsman from the Fan clan's Osmanthus Island, Ma Ji. For normal qi refiners, reaching the cave abode tier at 60 was considered to be slow, yet a cave abode tier swordsman would still be considered young even at 100 years of age. During Chen Ping'an's time on the Osmanthus Island, Ma Ji had made a rare display of bitterness, complaining to Chen Ping'an that if the Fan clan were willing to dedicate half of its wealth to wholeheartedly supporting him, then he would be able to reach the nascent tier. Chen Ping'an remained in the alley as he smiled and waved at Ma Ji, who smiled and nodded at him in response. That night, Chen Ping'an was laying on the rooftop of the dust medicinal shop, holding a jade tablet that was glittering and translucent under the moonlight, staring at it in an absent-minded manner. At the moment, Chen Ping'an didn't have much immortal currency, but that didn't mean that he was lacking in wealth, and this jade tablet was one of his earliest pieces of valuable belongings, something that had been in his possession even before his journey to Great Sui Nation. He chose not to refine the water seal. In the walk of life there were some things that one had to do, even if doing so would place them in great peril. However, at other times, there were certain temptations that had to be resisted at all costs. Chen Ping'an set the jade tablet down onto his chest, then gently folded his hands over it and closed his eyes. He had already lent deep infatuation to Sui Yubian, but even if the sword wasn't with her, it was still nowhere near enough for him. Unfortunately, he had left lasting qi back in the lotus flower-blessed land. Otherwise, he would be able to use it in the upcoming battle. If only someone could lend me a sword. Business was extremely slow for the dust medicinal shop leading up to the day of the battle, and even up to the day prior, it still hadn't received a single customer. In contrast with the shop's lack of customers, the ferry station on the island outside the city was graced by the presence of an intercontinental ship. At this moment, City Lord Fu Qi, the old nascent tier maidservant from the Cloud Forest Zhang clan, and the direct disciple of Parasol Leaf sect, Du Yan, were all standing side by side, waiting for the only passenger of the ship to disembark. It was an unremarkable-looking old man. Yet if the three people who had been sent after the great demon who had wreaked havoc in Planchette Writing Sect were present, they would immediately be able to identify him as the patriarch of Parasol Leaf Sect. The old man was dressed in very simple and modest clothing, and he disembarked from the ship before greeting everyone at the ferry station in an amicable fashion before making some small talk, displaying none of the domineering arrogance that Zhang Shangzhen often accused him of. However, as soon as the old man turned his gaze to Old Dragon City and began talking about the important matters at hand, everyone was immediately struck by a sense of mountainous pressure. "He's a 9th-tier martial artist, right?" "That's right," Fuqi replied with a wry smile. The old man nodded in response, then said, "Your Fu clan has gifted our Parasol Leaf Sect 4 ships that can travel between our Parasol Leaf Sect and Stalactite Mountain. That's quite a significant offering." With the arrival of the major cold solar term came howling winds that swept incessantly over the dragon scaling platform, and at this moment, several horse-drawn carriages were parked outside the alley in front of the dust medicinal shop. Under the orders of the Fu clan, the entire city had been placed under lockdown. Not only were itinerant cultivators and regular citizens of the city not permitted to spectate the battle on the dragon-scaling platform, anyone outside of the 6 major clans was also forbidden from loitering on the city streets. Of course, some wealthy and powerful figures in the city could secure exemptions through their connections to the 6 major clans, thereby allowing them to access the dragon-scaling platform and the inner city without any problems. There were naturally widespread objections to these unreasonable arrangements, but the Fu clan was too dominant a force in the city to be opposed, and it had already informed all of the powerful clans outside of the 6 major clans of its intentions in advance, so there were no significant mishaps. Occasionally, a dissenter would emerge to try and cause some trouble, only to be instantly suppressed before they could make any real impact. These were normally people from wealthy and powerful clans who felt that they were deserving of privileges above the common folk, and after being forced back to their manners by cultivators of the Fu clan, all of them were immediately showered with torrents of abuse from the seniors of their clans, scolding them for almost bringing disaster upon themselves and their clans. At the dust medicinal shop, everyone enjoyed a meal of congee courtesy of Julien, then set off for the dragon scaling platform. Zheng Dafeng led the way out of the shop, and he took a few puffs out of his pipe at the entrance, not looking nervous at all. However, in contrast with his usual messy and unkempt appearance, he had changed into a slightly old yet still very clean azure robe. Zhu Lian and Pei Qian cleared the table, while Sui Yubian was standing under the eaves of the shop, dressed in pristine white with deep infatuation on her back, and she resembled a stunning goddess as she stood under the eaves of the medicinal shop. Out of everyone, Wei Xian was dressed in the most eye-catching attire. He asked Chan Ping'an if it was against the law to wear imperial dragon robes, to which Chan Ping'an had jokingly replied that he could even wear an empress dress if he so desired. Hence, Wei Xian put on the imperial robes that he had brought with him out of his picture scroll. It was the dragon robe of Southern Garden Nation's founding emperor, and concealed upon one of its sleeves was the militarian armor pellet, West Mountain. Julien made his way out of the kitchen while wiping his hands on his apron, looking much like a chef, while trailing along behind him was Pei Qian, who seemed to be in a rather bad mood on this day. As usual, Chan Ping'an was wearing his golden sweet Windao robe and his jade hairpin, while his sword nurturing gourd was strapped to his waist on one side, and his jade tablet on the other. The jade tablet was something that Chan Ping'an had taken out of an acupoint that had once been home to an extremely small wisp of sword qi. By Fan Juemao's definition, it was something that had only undergone basic refinement, so it was still only something that he could look at but not use. Hence, it was more of a keepsake than anything else. To put it more accurately, it was an object of one of Chan Ping'an's very few fixations, which included avenging his parents, fulfilling his promise to Ning Yao to become a powerful sword immortal, his 60-year agreement with the sword spirit, and earning the right to be heard by all 4 words someday. On this day, Chan Ping'an had changed into a pair of new boots, which had been brought to him in secret by Pei Qian. Pei Qian had gotten up even before first light to go to the medicinal shop, where Chan Ping'an was sleeping on the ground, carrying the pair of boots with her. Chan Ping'an asked her where she had gotten the boots from, to which she replied that she had purchased them using the silver that they had borrowed from Jianyang. She had used some of the silver to buy food in Foxtown, but most of it had been spent on this pair of boots, and she intended to give them to Chan Ping'an earlier, but Chan Ping'an had later tried to chase her away and leave her in the inn on her own, so she had thrown a tantrum and buried the boots. After that, Chan Ping'an changed his mind and decided to take her with him to Mirage City, so she had snuck out at night to dig up the pair of boots again. At the time, Zhong Kuei had been with her, and he had said something about a cenotaph. On the way from the Mirage City ferry station to the Clear Realm Mountain ferry station, then to Old Dragon City, she had constantly been afraid of this so-called cenotaph. She was worried that it would irk Chun Ping'an, and she was feeling a little guilty, so she hadn't dared to bring out the boots until now. Chun Ping'an was clearly very pleased as he began putting on the boots, and even though he didn't praise Pei Qian much, his feelings about the boots were clearly reflected in his eyes. Pei Qian was crouched down beside him as she asked, "Do they fit well?" Chun Ping'an nodded in response. However, after Chun Ping'an put on the boots and jumped up and down in them a few times, he declared that Pei Qian was to stay with the Yin Soul at the dust medicinal shop instead of accompanying him to the dragon scaling platform, much to her dismay. He also told her that the Yin Soul was also going to leave the medicinal shop at some point, but she had nothing to fear as she would be safe as long as she didn't leave the medicinal shop. Pei Qian was naturally not very happy with this arrangement. She had been diligently practicing her deranged demon sword techniques every day for this occasion, but she could tell that Chun Ping'an was very serious, so she could only hang her head and agree to stay in the shop. After that, Chun Ping'an turned to Zheng Dafeng with a smile as he asked, "So what'll it be? Do we set off now?" Zheng Dafeng took a long draught from his pipe, then strapped it to his back to his waist as he stepped out of the shop and declared, "Let's go." With that, Chun Ping'an and the others set off from the dust medicinal shop. From there, they got on the carriage sent over by the Fan clan, but neither Fan Air nor Ma Ji were there with the carriage. Earlier, Fan Air had paid another visit to the medicinal shop, and he and Chun Ping'an had spent some time drinking on the rooftop. Chun Ping'an had warned him not to appear near the medicinal shop on the day of the major cold solar term, and Fan Air said he was aware of how serious the situation was, and he assured Chun Ping'an that he wouldn't be reckless. Pei Qian carried a little stool over to the entrance of the dust medicinal shop, then sat down on it and wrapped her arms around her own knees. Her trusty hiking pole was laying on the ground beneath her feet, and she was gently rolling it back and forth under the soles of her shoes. Leaning against the door of the shop was an oil paper umbrella. Chun Ping'an had instructed her to keep the oil paper umbrella close to her at all times, even if she were in the dust medicinal shop. The Yin Soul with the Zhao surname still hadn't set off yet, but all Zheng Dafeng had to do was snap his pipe, and the Yin Soul would be able to instantly appear by his side. If he were to show himself too early on the dragon scaling platform, then perhaps the Fu clan would be able to work out certain countermeasures against him, so he was going to remain hidden for now. The battle that was set to take place on the dragon scaling platform was truly a battle for the ages, and the only people who were going to be standing on the dragon scaling platform on this day were some of the powerful people in the entire city. "Are you worried about Chun Ping'an?" the Yin Soul asked as he turned to Pei Qian. Pei Qian shook her head in response. "My father's so strong, nothing bad will happen to him." The Yin Soul smiled as he said, "He's definitely a very strong man, albeit a little dumb. This clearly has nothing to do with him, yet he insists on getting involved for some reason." To the Yin Soul's surprise, Pei Qian didn't flare up with rage. Instead, she murmured to herself, "My father's not dumb. He's just too kind for his own good. Otherwise, he wouldn't be bringing me with him. All I do is waste his money. My father is so rich, yet he's still extremely stingy. He never wastes money on anything, and if it were possible, he'd split a single copper coin into pieces to spend." The more she spoke, the more disheartened Pei Qian became, and she pulled out the yellow treasure pagoda demon-suppressing talisman out of her sleeve, then slapped it onto her own forehead. After that, she raised her head and blew out of her mouth so that the talisman drifted up into the air in front of her face. There were 3 horse-drawn carriages traveling from the inner city to the outer city. Zheng Dafeng was seated in the front carriage, resting with his eyes closed. He was already doing everything in his power to suppress his own fist intent, but it was still showing signs of spilling out. Whenever the carriage hit a slight bump, a burst of fist intent would escape from his body, only to be immediately reined back in. Chun Ping'an wanted to travel in the same carriage with Zhu Lian, but the latter was beaten to the punch by Sui Yubian. Hence, Zhu Lian could only leave Chun Ping'an to her before getting into the same carriage with Wei Xian and Lu Baixiang. Inside the carriage, Chan Ping'an and Sui Yubian were seated across from one another, and the latter asked, Did your opinion of Lu Baixian change because he was the first one to reveal the phrase that had been told to him? Do you dislike me because you detected the hint of killing intent that I displayed toward you back in the inn on the border? Instead of answering her questions, Qian Ping'an raised one of his own. The old Taoist priest assured me that the four of you would be absolutely loyal to me after emerging from your picture scrolls. Did he tamper with your mental states to ensure this? He then answered his own question as he mused. I don't think that's the case. Not only did you display killing intent to me that one time, the four of you have always seemed like living, breathing people to me. As long as you're human, there will always be fluctuations in your emotions, regardless of how much you temper your own mental state. No one can be certain that they won't change over time. Hence, I'm very curious about how the old Taoist priest could be so confident in assuring me that none of you will turn on me. Do you not trust him? Sui Yubian asked. I do trust him on this matter, Qian Ping'an replied. Sui Yubian stroked a hand over the scabbard of deep infatuation, which was sitting across her lap, and she revealed, aside from the 4 unique phrases that were told to each of us, there's actually one more phrase that all 4 of us were told. Actually, I'm not sure about Wei Xian because he never chats with us in private, but at the very least, I know that Lu Baixiang, Zhu Lian and I are aware of it. Can you tell me? Qian Ping'an asked. A wry smile appeared on Sui Yubian's face as she said, I suppose it couldn't hurt to tell you. We were told that the one who kills Qian Ping'an will be the only one who's freed. Hence, if you had summoned me out of my picture scroll first, then I would have tried to kill you no matter what. As for why Wei Xian made no attempt on your life even though he was the first to be summoned, that's something that's beyond me. During the battle at the inn, you summoned the 3 of us as well, and from there, the 4 of us all kept an eye on each other, making sure none of us could claim the only chance at freedom, thereby ensuring your safety. But back in the temple on the mountain, Wei Xian personally told me that if I die, then all of you die. Doesn't that contradict what you just told me? Qian Ping'an asked as his brows furrowed slightly. Sui Yubian smiled as she replied. In that case, either Wei Xian lied to you, or the master of our lotus flower-blessed land had already predicted that you would summon Wei Xian first, so he intentionally refrained from telling Wei Xian that killing you would grant him his freedom. In any case, regardless of what's going on with Wei Xian, at the very least Lu Baixiang, Zhu Lian, and I won't allow anyone among the 3 of us to kill you. If any of us dares to kill you in private, then that person will be hunted by the other 2 until one side has perished. None of us are willing to lose our chance at freedom. You've reached the pinnacle of the lotus flower-blessed land before, so I'm sure you're aware that freedom is not just some willy-nilly pursuit for people like us. Qian Ping'an didn't make any comment on the concept of freedom raised by Sui Yubian. Instead, he merely sighed. No wonder people always say that you can never outsmart the heavens. No matter how one tries to outsmart the heavens, they'll always be one step behind. Sui Yubian smiled as she said, even if you manage to survive this ordeal, you'll be incurring a massive loss. Is it worth it? Due to how vast this world was and how far cultivators had distanced themselves from the mortal world, there were far too many people and things that weren't worth it. Qian Ping'an offered no response, merely closing his eyes as he began practicing his standing meditation. The 3 carriages traveled out of the outer city en route to the dragon scaling platform, while Fu Qi began to scale the dragon scaling platform on his own. The nascent tier patriarch of the Fu clan wasn't present, but Fu Donghai, Fu Chunhua, Fu Nanhua, Chu Yang, and a collection of other Fu clan guest elders were all standing at the foot of the dragon scaling platform. Chu Yang was standing with a cold look on his face. During his battle against Zheng Dafeng, he had successfully made a breakthrough to the nascent tier, but he had made it clear to Fu Qi in advance that regardless of the outcome of the battle about to take place, he wasn't going to involve himself any further in this mess. Last time, he had already made an exception by leaving his seaside thatched cottage to go to the Fu clan to stop Zheng Dafeng, and that was already beyond what could have been reasonably asked of him as a guest elder. Fu Qi raised no objections to this, assuring Chu Yang that all he would have to do was stand by and watch, and that no one was going to disrupt his peaceful cultivation from here onward. Fu Donghai was completely expressionless, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking or feeling. He had thought that by plotting against Zheng Dafeng while Fu Nanhua was getting all the attention and glory, he would be making a major contribution to the Fu clan, and in doing so, he would be able to outshine Fu Nanhua and win some favor with Fu Qi. However, never did he think that this would be the outcome. After he was severely injured by Zhang Dafeng last time, Fu Qi didn't even pay him a single visit, neither reprimanding him nor making any effort to console him. It was as if Fu Donghai was dead to him, and that was the most frustrating thing for him. Not only was Fu Qi the leader of the Fu clan, he was also the lord of Old Dragon City, and whenever it came to dealing with the affairs of the clan and the city, he had always been extremely easygoing. For example, he never went out of his way to bully the other major clans in the city into submission, and even the useless pieces of trash in the Fu clan that were unable to cultivate were treated extremely well. However, this meant that whenever Fu Qi showed his cold and unforgiving side, even his children, like Fu Donghai and Fu Chunhua, couldn't help but fear him. Fu Chunhua was watching with an absent-minded look on her face as Fu Qi scaled the dragon scaling platform. She still recalled the time when her father had taken her to see Zhang Dafeng. The meeting hadn't gone very well, but neither had it gone poorly. Essentially, all that was established was that they were people walking different paths that weren't ever going to intersect, and it was decided that they were going to stay out of each other's way. However, that tenuous equilibrium was completely shattered by Fu Donghai's little sinister plot. As a bystander to all of this, Fu Chunhua was able to assess the situation from a far more rational perspective, and she could tell that Fu Qi actually wasn't angry at Fu Donghai for what he had done. Instead, he was a little glad that things had turned out this way. He had already given up hope on Fu Donghai, but the latter had just inadvertently provided a catalyst to a sequence of events that Fu Qi had been trying to set into motion but didn't know how. Essentially, Fu Donghai had given him a massive helping hand. Out of the three siblings, Fu Nanhua was the one that was more bored and disinterested in all of this. In his mind, there was no doubt that Zhang Dafeng was going to die on the dragon scaling platform. As for that woman from the Jiang clan, while it was true that they were newlyweds on their wedding day, there had been an open and candid discussion between the two, laying out the terms of their marriages, terms that Fu Nanhua deemed to be acceptable. To his surprise and contrary to all of the rumors circulating about her, the woman wasn't hideous at all. Instead, her looks were at least on par with those of Jean Su from Osmanthus Island, whom Fu Nanhua had once developed feelings for. However, Fu Nanhua had no intentions of being physically intimate with her as on their wedding night. The old maidservant from the Jiang clan had been standing in the corner of their room, watching his every move like a hawk. The old maidservant was a seasoned nascent tier swordswoman, so Fu Nanhua naturally didn't dare to step out of line at all. All he had done was take a glance at the woman from the Jiang clan, his newlywed wife, and he was immediately given a cold glare by the old maidservant. He didn't dare to oppose her, so he was forced to comply, and after that, he kept his distance from his wife and the old maidservant, only visiting them when it was absolutely necessary. To her credit, the woman stuck to her end of the agreement, even covering the costs of when Fu Nanhua went out drinking with his friends. Fu Nanhua felt this to be an exceptional arrangement, and he had to learn to be content with what he had. This marriage was always only meant to be an event that marked the alliance between the Fu Cla and Jiang clan, and as long as he was willing to spend the money, he could still find a few women in Old Dragon City as beautiful as her. The Ding clan was situated at the center, while the Feng clan and the Ho clan were standing on either side. However, Du Yin, the direct disciple of Parasol Leaf sect that had always been seen as the Ding clan's greatest backer, wasn't present. Having said that, this was a blessing of sorts for the three clans. In his absence, they were able to converse with one another in a much more free and relaxed manner, rather than having to constantly be careful and apprehensive with their words in case they unintentionally said something to offend Du Yin. The Parasol Leaf sect was so powerful that the entire continent that was home to it had been named after it. It was far too formidable to contend with, even if all of the major clans of Old Dragon City were to combine their powers. On top of that, the major clans of the city had always been in competition with one another, so they were never going to be able to come together and combine their powers anyway. Eastern Treasured Vial Continent had always been the smallest one of the 9 continents, while Parasol Leaf sect was the most powerful sect on Parasol Leaf Continent. Both the Feng clan and the Ho clan were secretly very glad that Du Yin was only protecting the Ding clan due to his marriage with a woman from the Ding clan. If the Parasol Leaf sect's connection with the Ding clan was any deeper than that, then all of the other major clans would have to be very apprehensive. At the moment, The Feng clan was faring the worst out of the three clans as their entire manor had almost been demolished by Zheng Dafeng. However, on this day, the young man from the Feng clan whose actions had led to all of this was looking very elated and excited, and he wasn't sullen or subdued in the slightest. At this moment he was chatting with a friend of his from the Ho clan in an animated fashion. And how could he not be excited? That madman from the dust medicinal shop was about to be beaten to death for everyone to see on the dragon scaling platform. Even once Zheng Dafeng crossed over to the other side, he was going to make him regret ever messing with the Feng clan. The Sun clan and Fan clan were standing very far away from the Ding, Feng, and Ho clans, and barely anyone from the two clans had come to spectate the upcoming battle. Sun Jiashu wasn't present, while the Fan clan had only sent an old man from their ancestral hall. The rest were all just side branch clansmen who had displayed outstanding talent. As the three horse-drawn carriages rolled into view, the people gathered at the foot of the dragon scaling platform didn't do any pointing or jeering. Even the young man from the Feng clan, who was convinced that Zheng Dafeng's fate was sealed, had fallen silent, and the smile had vanished from his face. Regardless of what their personalities were like, all of the people present were here on behalf of their clans, so they knew not to do anything that would bring shame upon their clans. Similarly, none of the clans had used any immortal artifacts such as hovering pavilions or miniature ships to rise up into the air so that they could watch the battle in comfort. Instead, all of them were standing at the foot of the dragon scaling platform, watching the battle set to take place on the platform using things like enchanted picture scrolls. In fact, no one had even dared to make such a suggestion, and that was all owing to the tremendous reputation that the Fu clan had built up over the past several thousand years, as well as the survival instincts of the other major clans of Old Dragon City. The three carriages slowly drew to a halt near the foot of the dragon scaling platform, and even though all of the members of the Fu clan were looking on with mocking expressions, none of them jumped out to verbally provoke Zheng Dafeng. Not only would doing so potentially lead to their death, they would also be embarrassing the Fu clan, so even if they were to die, the Fu clan wouldn't stand up for them. Zheng Dafeng scaled the platform on his own, leaving no parting words for Qian Pingan and the others prior to his ascent. Qian Pingan took a glance at his surroundings, then quickly focused his gaze back on the staircase leading up to the dragon scaling platform. In the distance, Fu Nanhua was observing Qian Pingan with a very surprised expression. From his perspective, the dark-skinned young boy from Clay Vase Alley had undergone a massive transformation. It had only been a few years since their last encounter, and he had developed the confidence to not only not avoid Fu Nanhua in Old Dragon City, but even get himself involved in this very messy situation. On top of that, Kai Jinjian from Dawn Cloud Mountain had been among the people who had traveled to Old Dragon City to congratulate the Fu clan on its marriage alliance with the Jiang clan. Fu Nanhua had thought that she had died for sure in Jewel's small world. But instead, not only was she very much alive, she had made significant strides in her cultivation base. Additionally, the attitude that she had displayed during their last meeting had also been rather peculiar. As Zheng Dafeng reached the summit of the dragon scaling platform, Qian Pingan continued to look up at him from down below, but he was unable to see anything through the sea of clouds. Only by boarding a ship and looking down from high up in the sky would one be able to see the summit of the dragon scaling platform. According to Zheng Dafeng, this sea of clouds had been present over Old Dragon City for thousands of years, and it was the fundamental source of the city's power. In fact, the history of the Sea of Clouds could be dated all the way back to when the final true dragon in this world reached Eastern Treasured Vile Continent. That was also the origin of the underground dragon channel. After that came the horrific spectacle of dead cultivators falling like rain after being struck down in battle in Jewel's small world, as well as the Crab Archway, the small town, that well, that snowy night, the young girl that fell unconscious and almost froze to death in front of Qian Pingan's ancestral residence on Clay Vase Alley, the one who was saved by Qian Pingan only to go on and become Song Jisen's maidservant. The old Taoist priest from the East Sea led Qian Pingan on a journey of countless years in the lotus flower-blessed land, one that spanned an immeasurable distance, and during the journey, he said to Qian Pingan that all of the events that took place in the world were traceable, as was the case for human thoughts. However, this was still too profound a concept for Qian Pingan to explore. High up above everyone's heads, Fan Junmao was laying on top of the giant sea of clouds, staring blankly at the heavens above, wishing that she could see just a little further. The girl that had stepped onto the dragon scaling platform earlier wanted to seize control of the Sea of Clouds from her, most likely in order to mend the robe crafted by the Fu clan. If she could accomplish such a feat, then there was a chance that she would be able to elevate the old dragon robe from a pseudo-celestial tool to a bona fide celestial tool. This was something that Fan Junmao was taking very seriously. It was a battle of the Great Tao, even more perilous than any life-threatening danger. For someone like her, dying once didn't mean anything. As long as her Great Tao wasn't severed, she could easily come back. Hence, the old man in the Yang family's medicine shop was the only one who couldn't be allowed to die. As long as he was still alive and well, Fan Junmao, Li Lu, and all of the other people chosen by him would never truly die. As for whether Fan Junmao was afraid of anyone else in this world aside from Old Man Yang, the answer to that question was no, not in the slightest. Even if the founders of 3 teachings were to personally descend upon Old Dragon City and erase her out of her existence with their unfathomable powers that outstripped even those of Old Man Yang, she would still harbor only resentment toward them, and there would be no fear or veneration in her heart. Even though her great Tao conflicted with that of Jigui, the two of them were very similar in this regard. All of a sudden, she sat up as she cast a perplexed gaze toward Fu Qi. At this point, Zheng Dafeng had already reached the summit of the dragon scaling platform, where Fu Qi was waiting for him. On this day, Fu Qi hadn't borrowed the pseudo-celestial tool of the Fu clan's nascent tier ancestor, nor was he wearing his old dragon robe, and the pseudo-celestial tool that protected the Fu clan's ancestral hall wasn't in his possession either. On top of that, he wasn't able to control the Sea of Clouds overhead, so the only thing that he was carrying with him was the pseudo-celestial tool he had only recently bought from another continent, an ownerless flying sword left behind by a deceased sword immortal. It was clear to Fan Junmao that something wasn't right. She slapped the Sea of Clouds beneath her, and it abruptly descended, skirting around the dragon scaling platform to instantly encompass the entirety of Old Dragon City. At the same time, she bit through the skin of her index finger, inscribing a talisman on the palms of her hands with her own blood. It was an ancient talisman that had been lost for countless years, and the mystical ability of Qi refiners to observe mountains and rivers through the palms of their hands was nothing more than a pale imitation of this talisman. After the inscription was completed, Fan Junmao's complexion was left looking a little pale, and she joined her palms together before abruptly spreading her arms open. A series of images began to flash over her hands, and she stared intently at those passing images, trying to glean the secrets that they harbored. The Fu clan's ancestral hall, the Sun clan's ancestral residence, the dust medicinal shop. One setting after another flashed before her eyes, and in the end, the image settled on an elderly figure standing atop the city wall of the outer city, upon which the talisman that Fan Junmao had inscribed onto the palm of her hand instantly shattered. The skin and flesh on the palms of her hands had been torn open, and she forcibly gulped down a mouthful of blood that had gushed to the base of her throat. On top of that, she had just lost over 10 years' worth of cultivation base for a normal nascent tier earth immortal, but she didn't care about that at all. Instead, her mind was still focused on the elderly figure that she had seen in the instant before the talisman on the palms of her hands had fallen away. She could tell that the old man was at least a 12th tier Qi refiner. Could it be that old fart from Parasol Leaf Sect? She had always had a very nonchalant personality and was very rarely fazed by anything, but at this moment, her brows were tightly furrowed with vexation. If Zheng Dafeng were to die by the hands of Fu Qi on the dragon scaling platform, then he would have no one to blame but himself. However, if he were to leave the dragon scaling platform alive, only to be inexplicably struck down by an outsider, then that would be a far more difficult outcome for her to stomach. Old Dragon City had always been her territory, but was it really worth sacrificing her life as Fan Junmao for Zheng Dafeng, a man who she wasn't even particularly fond of? She lay back down onto the Sea of Clouds and began to weigh up her options. Well, objectively speaking, there weren't really any options to be weighed up. Hence, she closed her eyes and heaved a faint sigh. At the very least, she had decided that she was no longer going to bear witness to Zheng Dafeng's demise. The entire dragon scaling platform began trembling violently, and the water of the East Sea and the South Sea began crashing against the shore, only to be suppressed by the mystical abilities of all of the earth immortals in the city. On the surface of the sea not far away from the ferry station on the island, A young Dao was standing on a giant golden gourd with a wide smile on his face. Chen Ping'an's oil paper umbrella was able to conceal his aura, thereby saving his life, but it also prevented his backers from conducting divination on him and providing him with timely reinforcements. Essentially, it was a double-edged sword. You're screwed now, Chen Ping'an. You've messed with the one guy you can't afford to mess with on Parasol Leaf Continent. If you were dealing with anyone from the Jade Tablet Sect, Planchette Writing Sect, Peace and Tranquility Mountain, or even anyone else from Parasol Leaf Sect, then you would be fine. I'll admit that you do have some tricks up your sleeve, so you don't have to fear anyone of the same cultivation base as yourself, and you can perhaps even hold your own against a golden core or nascent tier earth immortal. As for the cultivators of the upper 5 tiers, an unpolished Jade tier cultivator may not be willing to bully a young pure martial artist like yourself, and for those at the immortal tier, they may be able to see deeper than everyone else, and they most likely won't be willing to target you. Unfortunately, you're dealing with the most unreasonable person in the entire Parasol Leaf Sect, and he also just so happens to be the second most powerful cultivator on the entire Parasol Leaf Continent. Even if you're willing to give up everything you have and even put your own life on the line to save Zheng Dafeng, all our efforts will ultimately be in vain, and there's a very good chance that you'll die here. That wouldn't be a bad outcome. I can take your body back to the Taoist temple, and you can serve as fertilizer for the lotus flower-blessed land. With that in mind, a look of schadenfreude appeared on the young Taoist priest's face, and he chuckled to himself. There are going to be some hard times ahead for Eastern Treasured Vile Continent. The battle on the dragon scaling platform concluded after no more than an hour, and the outcome was astonishing for everyone present. The one to walk down from the dragon scaling platform was Zheng Dafeng. On top of that, he didn't seem to be carrying any injuries, and he certainly didn't look like he was on the brink of death. Fu Donghai and Fu Chunhua were both astonished to see this. Could it be that Fu Qi was dead? If that was the case, then that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The two of them exchanged a glance with each other, as if some type of tacit understanding existed between them. Meanwhile, Fu Nanhua remained calm and composed with a smile on his face. Right at this moment, a voice rang out in his mind's lake, and he flipped a hand over to make a subtle gesture. Over at the Ding clan, an elder stepped forward and whispered something into the ear of the clan leader, following which the latter quickly approached the leaders of the Feng clan and the Ho clan for a secret conversation, at the end of which the two displayed different reactions, but both of them still nodded in agreement to whatever had been proposed. That subtle gesture from Fu Nanhua had been like a huge rock plunging into a lake, sending massive waves erupting in all directions. After Zheng Dafeng descended from the dragon scaling platform, he remained silent and got into one of the 3 carriages with Chen Ping'an, following which his complexion instantly turned deathly pale as he said in a raspy voice, "Fu Qi surrendered halfway through the battle. It's clear that he never intended to fight me to the death in the first place. Not only did he not fight me to the death and give me a chance to break through my 10th tier bottleneck, he didn't pull out any of his pseudo-celestial tools either. Instead, he merely traded some blows with me so that we both sustained some injuries before suddenly forfeiting out of the blue. Hence, we're definitely going to be attacked on the way back to the medicinal shop, so make up your mind now, Chen Ping'an. Do you want to get off the carriage now, or return with me to the medicinal shop? Fu Qi may be a shameless scoundrel, but I value my dignity," Chen Ping'an replied in a calm manner. Zheng Dafeng tipped his head to the side, then wiped away the blood that flowed out of his ears as he chuckled. "Do you even believe that yourself? If you truly valued your dignity, would you have gone around delivering letters back in the town every morning just for a few copper coins? Is there any shame in that?" "I was simply doing paid work," Chen Ping'an countered. A wry smile appeared on Zheng Dafeng's face as he sighed. "Do I have to beg you to leave?" "Even if you beg me, I'm not going anywhere," Chen Ping'an replied. "What the hell do you want?" Zheng Dafeng asked as he leaned back in a defeated manner. Chen Ping'an hesitated momentarily, then explained, "The breakthrough that I made in Old Dragon City last time was quite strange. At the time it wasn't very clear to me, but following my return from the Lotus Flower Blessed Land, as soon as I arrived in Old Dragon City, my instincts told me that there was a sinister force lurking in my heart, and that if I were to leave, then it would immediately be set free to wreak havoc. Perhaps this is an inevitable tribulation that I must transcend for going against the will of the heavens to reconstruct my bridge of immortality. As I was crossing that stone arch bridge, I felt like I was finally being accepted by heaven and earth, but that was nothing more than an illusion. In reality, it seems like majestic world has finally set its sights on me, and if I run away today, then I'll have to spend the rest of my life on the run. Zheng Dafeng believed this, but even so, he was still convinced that this was nothing more than an excuse from Qian Ping'an. Even so, don't throw your life away because of me, Zheng Dafeng sighed. Go sacrifice yourself for someone else. I'm most likely not going to live past today. Don't make me owe you such a massive favor before I die. Go to Li Er or go find your friend Lu Xianying. Just don't stay here and die for nothing. Qian Ping'an pointed at Zheng Dafeng's eye as he said, You're bleeding out of your eye. You're not the best-looking guy anyway, so make sure you clean yourself up. Otherwise, no woman is ever going to fall for you. Honestly, the girl who worked for you must have had terrible taste in men. Hell, even she wouldn't like you anymore if she saw you right now. Zheng Dafeng aimed a light kick at Qian Ping'an out of a combination of vexation and amusement, only for Qian Ping'an to casually sweat his foot away. The three carriages began traveling back to Old Dragon City. All three coach drivers were servants of the Fan clan who had made death pledges, so they were all quite calm and ready to face whatever fate awaited them. After traveling for close to 10 kilometers, two guest elders from the Feng clan appeared up ahead, namely a 7th-tier martial artist and a golden core-tier cultivator. Zheng Dafeng stood up to exit the carriage, but Qian Ping'an raised a hand to stop him. Sui Yubian got out of her carriage first, followed by Lu Baixiang. Sui Yubian was going to face the two guest elders on her own for now, while Lu Baixiang slowly trailed along behind two of the carriages, ready to back up Sui Yubian at any moment. The remaining carriage had drawn to a halt, and it was soon also intercepted, this time by guest elders of the Ho clan. Zhu Lian jumped out of his carriage. Another carriage drew to a halt, and Wei Xian began trailing along the carriage that Qian Ping'an and Zheng Dafeng were in on foot. After that came the guest elders of the Ding clan. Wei Xian was dressed in his imperial dragon robe, outside of which was his West Mountain armor pellet, and he stopped in place while the carriage continued onward. Zheng Dafeng shook his head as he said with tightly furrowed brows, Things have already escalated beyond our expectations. The battle on the dragon scaling platform went far better than any of us could have imagined, but the situation right now is even worse than the worst-case scenario that we envisioned. The Fu clan doesn't even care about upholding the dignity of the Cloud Forest Jiang clan anymore. What on earth is going on? If not, then at very least, they have to be an unpolished Jade-tier swordsman, and that's why even the Cloud Forest Jiang clan is willing to swallow its pride and tolerate this. If I had to guess, whoever is waiting for us must have already gotten involved with Old Dragon City a long time ago, and they're only killing you on the side as a small bonus in addition to the more important deal that's taking place. As for the Fan clan, there's a good chance that they've already been excluded from this deal, and are going to be dealt with separately. Regardless of whether Fan Junmao intervenes or not, the Fan clan could well be in dire straits already. A self-deprecating look appeared on Zheng Dafeng's face as he sighed. In that case, I was never going to be able to live past today. I suppose the only thing that I can hope for now is that whoever's waiting for us will give me the chance to reach the 10th tier. The carriage slowly drew to a halt, and Qian Ping'an raised the curtain to look up at the top of the city wall as he mused. I doubt that's going to happen. Zheng Dafeng and Qian Ping'an stood side by side on the road leading into the city, and atop the city wall stood Du Yan and his wife from the Ding clan, as well as an unremarkable-looking old man. Du Yan smiled as he asked, Isn't it a little too unfair for these two that you're coming after them in person, old ancestor? The old man smiled as he replied, Unfair? Why did I work so hard in my cultivation if I can't even bully those beneath me? Besides, did my current cultivation base grow on a tree? I had to earn my cultivation base through countless battles of life and death, so how is it unfair that my cultivation base is superior to theirs? You're as correct as ever, old ancestor, Du Yan replied with a smile. A hesitant look then appeared on his face as he asked, What should we do with Qian Ping'an? The old man smiled as he said, I've heard his name before. Even after that idiot from our clan borrowed our clan's most powerful artifact, he still failed to kill that great demon that had wreaked havoc in Planchette Writing Sect. Instead, a swordsman dealt the killing blow before him, and somehow Jiang Shangzhen was the one who reaped the rewards. I've heard of that swordsman before, he's a real powerful guy. His name is Zui Yu, and he's a disciple of the scholarly sage. Over the past century, he shattered the sword hearts of many exceptionally talented young swordsmen from all of the continents, such as Chao Jun from southern world continent. Back then you could hardly find anyone that hadn't heard of him, but ever since the scholarly sage imprisoned himself in the forest of virtue, Zui Yu seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. His swordsmanship is perhaps the best under the heavens. After he killed that great demon, he asked about Chan Ping'an, so it's clear that this Chan Ping'an must have some strong ties to the scholarly sage. Du Yan's skin was crawling slightly upon hearing this. He couldn't even begin to imagine how exceptional a swordsman Zui Yu had to be in order to earn such glowing praise from Du Mao. On top of that, Chan Ping'an's strong ties to the scholarly sage was most likely going to ensure that he would emerge from this ordeal unharmed, but Zheng Dafeng was most definitely going to die here. However, to his surprise, Du Mao continued, "Otherwise, why would I have asked you to bring along that ship? I'm waiting for Zui Yu to come. I'm not afraid of him. The only thing that I'm worried about is that he won't show up, and that I'll have brought my bonded item in vain." Du Yan's eyes immediately lit up with excitement upon hearing this, and he extended a respectful bow as he praised, "Your courage and flair are truly unmatched, old ancestor." "Stop trying to suck up to me," Du Mao scoffed. "If you have what it takes, then strive to reach the same heights as I have so that your descendants will all clamber over each other to suck up to you as well. Such lofty aspirations are far beyond me," Du Yan replied in an uneasy manner. "That's why you're also destined to be a useless piece of trash," Du Man scoffed with a disappointed shake of his head. "You're just lucky that you have the same surname as me." Not only was Du Yan not disheartened in the slightest upon hearing this, a bright smile appeared on his face as he asked, "Having good luck is a skill in itself, is it not?" "You're not wrong there," Du Mao replied with a nod before taking a step forward. And in the blink of an eye, he arrived right in front of Zheng Dafeng. The two of them were only separated by about 2 or 3 steps, and due to his diminutive frame, Du Mao was forced to look up slightly at Zheng Dafeng. He smiled as he said, "I heard that you used to be the gatekeeper of Jewel's small world, and that you're serving that old fart with the Yang surname. I wonder if he'll dare to leave that cage of his to come after me if I kill you here." Zheng Dafeng remained completely unmoved as he threw a punch at Du Mao, who clasped his hands behind his back and took the punch head-on. After being struck by Zheng Dafeng's fist, he slid back a few steps, but his entire body remained as still as a mountain. As for Zheng Dafeng, his abdomen had been pierced through by what appeared to be a miniature arc around twice the length of a human arm. Du Mao wiped the blood from the corner of his lips as he scoffed. "That's all you've got? I'm not a pure martial artist. Don't you pure martial artists always say that the bodies of chi refiners are as fragile as paper? I can't say I'm very convinced." He then flicked away the blood on his hand before pointing at Zheng Dafeng's abdomen as he continued, "Just to make things clear, that's not a swordsman's bonded flying sword. I've always detested swordsmen more than anyone else. All they do is show off, and in particular, all of those so-called sword immortals are as arrogant can be. Whenever I see them, I'm struck by the urge to gouge out their eyeballs and stick them up their arses. It's a pity that once I attained sufficient power to accomplish this feat, I had to obey the rules of this world and resign myself to being trapped in a massive cage. How frustrating is that?" Du Mao took a disdainful glance up at the sky as he spoke. Zheng Dafeng launched himself forward before throwing another punch at Du Mao, only for the latter to evade the punch by stepping to the side, following which he pressed a hand against Zheng Dafeng's head before shoving him backward. Zheng Dafeng was sent flying back over 1,000 feet with the miniature arc still lodged firmly in his abdomen, and he fell onto a puddle of his own blood, trying to struggle to his feet over and over again in futility. "Can you summon Zui Yu to save you?" Du Mao asked as he turned to Chan Ping'an, then swept a sleeve toward him without giving him a chance to reply. Chan Ping'an flew back through the air, then twisted around in midair in an agile fashion before drifting down onto the ground. Only after stomping one foot firmly into the ground was he able to arrest his own momentum. A hint of surprise appeared on Du Mao's face as he remarked, "You're much more competent than I imagined. In fact, you have the potential to not be completely useless. Having said that, your surname isn't Du, so even if you die, it won't be a pity." He then raised a hand before bringing it down gently, and a giant golden hand the size of a mountain descended through the sea of clouds above Old Dragon City to crash down upon Chan Ping'an. In response, Chen Ping'an unleashed his rain evaporation technique, and a huge cloud of dust rose up into the air within a radius of 1,000 feet, casting a huge shadow over the entire area. Chen Ping'an slowly made his way up the slanted slope to the top of the crater, reappearing in Du Mao's field of view. Du Mao inspected his surroundings briefly, then remarked, "It looks like Zuyu isn't your Dao guardian. In that case, no one is coming to save you." At this point, Golden Sweet Wine's true form had already been revealed, and all of a sudden Chen Ping'an was sent flying back, as if he had been picked up and hurled forth by a giant, invisible hand, tumbling through the air in an arc before crashing into the city wall of Old Dragon City behind Du Mao. So what if you have all the potential in the world? You haven't even reached the upper 5 tiers yet, so you're still just a useless piece of trash. Du Mao scoffed as he flicked a finger toward the city wall behind him without even taking a backward glance, and a series of giant cracks instantly appeared on the city wall. In the wake of Du Mao's flick, Chen Ping'an crashed straight through the city wall before landing in the outer city. Du Mao scratched his own head and waited for a moment, but nothing happened. Finally, Zhang Dafeng was able to struggle up to one knee, and he raised his head to look at Du Mao, who smiled as he said, "You can try snapping that old pipe. I'm really curious to see if that old fart will come to save you in person, or if he's just going to try and play some little trick on me." Zhang Dafeng threw up a large mouthful of blood as he said in a strained voice, "Kill me and spare Chen Ping'an." Du Mao shook his head in response. "If that old geezer from Jewel Small World were standing before me to make the same request, perhaps I would consider it, but..." All of a sudden, his voice trailed off as he turned around with slightly furrowed brows. To his surprise, Chen Ping'an had reappeared in the massive hole in the city wall, and he was only just barely able to remain on his feet as he held a certain object aloft in his hand. The expression of the old maidservant from the Cloud Forest Zhang clan darkened slightly upon seeing this, and she said in a grim voice, "That's the core of a beast of the upper 5 tiers. If it's been refined, then it can be detonated to destroy half of Old Dragon City. There's no way he would do something like that," Fu Nanhua declared with a confident smile. The old maidservant raised an eyebrow as she turned to look at him, and he explained, "That's just how much of an idiot he is. Even if he has to die, he wouldn't risk the lives of so many others." Sun Jiashu heaved a forlorn sigh. Indeed, Chen Ping'an wouldn't do something so selfish. He had only just taken a step forward when the Sun Clan's nascent tier ancestor grabbed onto his shoulder and warned, "Now's not the time. If you step forward now, our Sun Clan's entire plan will go down the drain." Sun Jiashu struggled against the old man's hand, but the latter refused to budge. "I can allow you to be reckless and willful in other matters, but you have to listen to me on this matter. This concerns more than just yourself." Sun Jiashu opened his mouth to raise some objections, but he was knocked unconscious by the old man before he had a chance to say anything. Chen Ping'an sat down onto the edge of the hole in the city wall as he declared, "I would like to offer this beast core in exchange for Zhang Dafeng's life." Even though they were situated quite far away from each other, Du Mao was able to hear him loud and clear, and an amused look appeared on his face as he chuckled. Since when was the life of a 9th-tier martial artist worth this much? After a brief moment of contemplation, he nodded as he continued, 9th-tier martial artists may be rare, but they're not as rare as 12th-tier beast cores, so I accept your offer." He then reached out to grab the beast core from afar before stowing it away, following which a cold smile appeared on his face as he said, "I'll spare Zhang Dafeng's life, but I'll be taking his cultivation base." He stomped a foot down onto Zhang Dafeng's back as he spoke, and a string of cracks and pops instantly rang out from Zhang Dafeng's spine. He limply collapsed to the ground, as if all of the bones had been pulled out of his body. Du Mao then turned back to Chen Ping'an as he asked, "All right, what are you going to offer me in exchange for your own life now? Remember that it has to be something even more precious than a 12th-tier beast core." Chen Ping'an sat down with his legs crossed, and his entire body was drenched in blood, to the point that it was impossible to make out his facial features. Du Mao smiled as he said, "I'm normally not so mild-tempered, but I'll make an exception today and wait for you for a little while." Du Mao's bonded celestial weapon was called the Sword-Devouring Arc, and it had been refined using the complete carcass of a giant ancient treasure-swallowing whale over the course of 600 years. During those 600 years, Parasol Leaf Sect had pledged countless resources into the refinement process. That was the only period in history in which Parasol Leaf Sect had been forced to bow its head to Jade Tablet Sect. It all began with the demise of their sect leader, who had perished during an accident while traveling through Middle-earth Divine Continent. In the wake of his death, there were no other immortal tier cultivators in the sect, resulting in a very rough transition period. After that, Du Mao had exhausted all of the sect's wealth to refine his bonded celestial weapon before going into seclusion for centuries. However, the first thing that he did after coming out of seclusion was travel to the Jade Tablet sect atop his giant arc to challenge an unpolished Jade tier sword immortal in a battle to the death. In the end, that sword immortal was killed, and even his bonded flying sword was devoured by Du Mao's giant arc. If something was capable of devouring even a sword immortal's flying sword, then it stood to reason that there was hardly anything under the heavens that it wasn't capable of devouring. Du Mao waited for a while, then asked, "Have you thought of anything?" "I don't have anything left," Chen Ping'an replied with a shake of his head. A smile appeared on Du Mao's face as he mused. "That sword-nurturing gourd of yours is decent, and that jade tablet looks quite dated. Is it a minimization treasure? Unfortunately for you, even those two things combined won't be enough to save your life. On top of that, once you're dead, those two things will be mine anyway." Chen Ping'an lowered his head and patted his sword-nurturing gourd as he forced a smile onto his own face and said, "Looks as where my life will come to an end. If you can run, then get out of here." He then reached out with his trembling and blooded left hand to remove the jade tablet from his waist, and he squeezed it with all his might, trying to destroy it because he absolutely did not want it to fall into the hands of anyone else. The minimization treasure remained completely unharmed. A guilt-ridden look appeared on Chen Ping'an's face, and at the same time, a hint of indignation welled up in his heart. He was never one to blame fate or other people, but in this moment he couldn't help but feel like it was all so unfair. He raised his left arm and brought it to his own face as the tears began to flow from his eyes, not wanting anyone else to see him in his moment of vulnerability. After that, he lowered his arms and took a glance toward the south before closing his eyes. "I have a sword, capable of moving mountains, splitting rivers, churning seas." An amused look appeared on Du Mao's face as he scoffed. "What on earth are you mumbling about? Shouldn't your final words be spent cursing me for beating down on someone as weak as yourself?" His bonded celestial weapon pierced through Chen Ping'an's abdomen as he spoke, and for some reason, the jade tablet was shattered in the same instant. Du Mao's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, but ultimately, the loss of a single minimization treasure wasn't enough to have too much of an emotional impact on him. On the summit of Tassel Mountain, the old scholar had been quietly conducting divination this entire time, and all of a sudden, his expression changed drastically as he sprang to his feet. In a rare display, a serious look appeared on his face as he demanded, "Help me slice through the barriers between the two continents. Don't ask why, just hurry." The armor-clad Tassel Mountain god merely nodded in response without asking any questions, then revealed his mountainous golden Tao manifestation before lashing out with his sword, slicing through the very fabric of time and space. The old scholar immediately set off, and the rift in time and space slowly closed behind him. Meanwhile, the land and water fortune of the entirety of Tassel Mountain churned violently. At the same time, it was as if someone had heard the words being uttered by Chen Ping'an over an old dragon city, and a gentle female voice rang out in response. The entirety of Jewel's small world began to tremble and sway violently, while Ruan Qiong did everything in his power to hold the small world intact. A tall white figure flew out from a cliff face that was riddled with dragon-slaying platform, and she rose up into the air with her large white sleeves flapping behind her. She paused momentarily as she stood atop the heavens above majestic world, then cast her gaze toward the southernmost region of eastern treasured vile continent before hurtling through the air like a flying sword, leaving a chorus of rumbling thunderclaps in her wake.